Hey everybody, it's your friend Adam. I'm here with PSA Sitch and Reid Nicewonder. And go ahead, do your thing.
What's up? How's it going?
You never actually introduced us, friended.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I've never talked to Sitch before. Oh,
Yeah.
nice to meet you,
Oh,
Sitch.
okay. What is Reid? This is my friend PSA Sitch. Sitch.
Big, big fan, big fan.
This is Reid Nicewonder. Reid is another fan of Jonathan Haidt. I think that's how I came to know him. He runs a great channel called
Cordial curiosity.
Cordial Curiosity.
Oh.
I always mess it up. I always get the alliteration wrong. So, but yes, what is it called? Street epistemology.
Yeah, that's what I do.
He asks people questions and they answer. He's actually very good at it. So, I was going to say here at the beginning of the stream, we're going to try to avoid any ad hominem. we've been sworn to do our best, our absolute best. So we're going to try to evaluate this on an intellectual level. I actually pulled some clips from the beginning of Jordan Peterson's book, and I want to look at those first. I have about a 7-minute clip here that's from 12 Rules for Life. And I wanted to tee it up because I have a feeling these are the parts of the book that have the most depth and substance to them, and they're the parts of the book that I should get their names right because I'm trying not to do ad hominem. But Hugo and Jake probably overlook. I've only watched 9 minutes of this video. Reid, have you watched? Think you said you watched it.
I watched about 30 minutes of it.
And Sitch, how much?
I watched the whole thing.
Oh, really? Oh my God,
Yep.
you're like fully ready to go. Okay.
Well, to be fair, you only need to watch 9 minutes to get a good, feeling for the rest of it.
Oh, okay. I'm ready to go then.
You're pretty set.
So before we get started, I just want to say that one of the things that I found interesting about the first chapter, just to give an overall view, is that he's very much talking about the first rule of moral psychology, which is a Jonathan Haidt thing. The first rule of moral psychology is morality binds and blinds. I think I tweeted this at you recently, Sitch, and you had, I don't know if you've ever encountered that. It's not something that I came up with. It's fully Jonathan Haidt.
Oh, yeah, I knew that you weren't smart enough to come up with that.
Hey, we said no ad hominem, guy. What's going on?
You said
here?
to them, not to you.
To them.
Yeah. Bring it. I'm ready for it. I want as many as you guys can throw at me. So the parts of the book of Jordan Peterson's book that I pulled out pretty much spell that morality binds and blinds thing. And one of the most interesting things about Jonathan Haidt and the Righteous Mind is he sets up this idea that it's called social intuitionism, and it's this idea that various stimulus give us a feeling of affect, either positive or negative, and they drive us towards something or drive us away from something. And then after we have that negative affect or positive affect, we deploy our moral reasoning only to confirm or deny these things. And this is exactly what I've seen so much in these Hugo and Jake videos. Like, they're very triggered by something like a happy face emoji, and then that makes them just despise Jordan Peterson. So they deploy all of their moral reasoning to figure out why Jordan Peterson is a bad guy. And I think we see a lot of that in this video. Sitch, you want to say something? Do you agree or disagree?
I think you nailed it. I mean, the whole video is just basically they read a passage or they talk about something Jordan Peterson believes or says, and then they just reinterpret it in the most negative, way you possibly could, which seems to be par for the course for him.
For Jordan Peterson? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because we actually see it the other way. But so there is a lot of substance here, and I didn't want to get through this stream and not point out how much substance there is. So you can tell me if they hit any of this substance or not. We'll just start on the 12 rules. You haven't read this book, have you, Sitch?
Well, I don't read books. So.
Yeah. Okay. You've read it, Reid, right?
I listened to the audiobook, yeah.
I had previously attempted to produce a more accessible version of Maps of Meaning, which is a very dense book. But I found that the spirit was neither in
If you guys want to say anything, just start talking and I'll go ahead and pause it.
me
Okay.
during that attempt, nor in the resultant manuscript. I think this was because I was imitating my former self and my previous book, instead of occupying the place between order and chaos and producing something new. I suggested that she watch 4 of the lectures I had done for a TVO program called Big Ideas on my YouTube channel.
So the reason that I pulled this clip out was because in the clip that I saw, Hugo and Jake had a very uncharitable view of the Quora thing that he talks about in the beginning of the book. And for me, he has a very like evidence-based look, which as an atheist, I don't think Reid's an atheist. I don't know that Sitch is an atheist, but as an atheist, I have a very empirical look, outlook on the world. So I really liked the way he was making an evidentiary case why this would be a good idea for a book, and that seemed to completely go over Hugo and Jake's head.
Yeah, they just see the whole thing as ego.
What's that?
They just see the whole thing as, Jordan Peterson's being egotistical because he said something and people liked it.
I think fundamentally
if
they
she did-
see
Go ahead.
Jordan Peterson as a Christian first, pretty much, not a scientist, and like not as a scientist of psychology. He is just a Christian, mostly using psychology to kind of give reasons for why Christianity is either good or true. I think that's where they're coming from.
Yeah, totally. So, but do you see Jordan Peterson? I mean, I see Jordan Peterson as a scientist first. I had tweeted out something about this is the reason why everyone is misunderstanding him, because he's putting forward like a materialist, rationalist view of religion, and they don't seem to understand that.
I think he's 90% a scientist.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, he said was it in the Matt debate, the Matt Dillahunt, blah, blah, whatever his guy's name is, debate, he said that, the Bible was written by men. So he doesn't believe, that God was involved or that he wrote it directly.
Yeah, he mentions that in the book pretty heavily as well.
So,
Yeah, it's so funny seeing Hugo and Jake criticizing Peterson, because like for most atheists, they want the Bible to be seen as a myth, and Peterson grants that immediately.
Yeah.
So it's very strange.
exactly. Though at the end of this, that you didn't get to yet, they kind of make some comment about how, if you're not atheist, then you're like automatically stupid. So that's probably where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just recently watched a Matt Dillahunt debate with a Christian that came at it from a scientific perspective. The Christians are starting to pick up that they have the evidence on their side, and they're starting to bring it out. And I was embarrassed for Matt Dillahunt, honestly. There was just one question at the end of the debate where they asked him, they asked the Christian, they said, well, what if the evidence was against you, then what? And he totally hesitated because he's a Christian, right? He's honor bound to ignore the evidence if it's against him. But with
Right.
me, I don't have that problem. That's why I'm like, well, if you debated me, I'd be like, well, if the evidence was on your side, we'd go with you. So
That's why you're a true Neo.
exactly. Daniel Irish for $5 said, when does the crying start?
We have to wait until they at least start complaining.
I know,
And then we
I
start
know.
complaining about them complaining.
So I have been listening to the audiobook. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but the portion that I was listening to today, Jordan Peterson is crying as he's reading the audio.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, it's so awesome. It's so awesome. I don't think Jonathan Haidt would have left it in there if he was crying. Although Jonathan Haidt sings in his audiobook and it's a little cringy, so
Oh, really?
he does. All right,
Oh,
let's
wow.
continue. Come on, we're 30 seconds in. This is going to be a
Okay.
long one, guys. Keep
Oh,
those
God.
super chats coming.
we could have a more informed and thorough discussion about what kind of topics I might address in a more publicly accessible book. She contacted me a few weeks later after watching all 4 lectures and discussing them with a colleague. Her interest had been further heightened, as had her commitment to the project. That was promising and unexpected. I'm always surprised when people respond positively to what I am saying, given its seriousness and strange nature. I'm amazed I've been allowed, or even encouraged, to teach what I taught first in Boston and now in Toronto. I've always thought if people really noticed what I was teaching, there would be hell to pay. You can decide for yourself what truth there might be in that concern after reading this book.
Okay, so that's the big smoking gun line that Hugo and Jake pull out. That's why I pulled it out.
Right. Though I think you should have played the Hugo and Jake part first.
Oh, we can move to the Hugo and Jake part. I mean,
just to give context of.
Well, no,
what
but
we're thinking.
you will see. Well, I thought it'd be better to play it ahead of time because it's so innocuous. Like, I'm under the impression what he's saying is, first of all, in academia, talking about Jungian myth is really, it's really not the way to move your career ahead. So I'm under the impression that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about how he's like a secret Nazi or something. Correct?
Yeah. No, he's a secret Nazi.
Colin Brefka for $2 says Jordan's technically a Christian agnostic. Yeah, or I would a cultural Christian. Supposedly he's not taking a position on his actual belief in God or the deity of Jesus or something like that. Somebody had told me that he is going to in 2 to 3 years, and I think we're a year away from when he said that. You want to say something, Reid?
I mean, Jordan Peterson is more a fan of myth in general, and he just sees Christianity as kind of the most distilled version of the most, I don't know, useful myth or something. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, the most useful ethical system.
Yeah.
Self-engineer calling you out for saying Jungian with a J.
Yeah.
Did I say Jungian? Should I say Jungian?
Jungian.
God, everyone hates. Keep making fun of me. I'm going to go back to anecdotal.
The piece of evidence supporting my supposition of their attractiveness. I suggested to my agent that I write a brief chapter on each of the rules. She agreed. So I wrote a book proposal suggesting as much. When I started writing the actual chapters, however, they weren't at all brief. I had much more to say about each rule than I originally envisioned. This was partly because I had spent a very long time researching my first book, studying history, mythology, neuroscience, psychoanalysis, child psychology, poetry, and large sections of the Bible. I read, and perhaps even understood, much of Milton's Paradise Lost, Goethe's Faust, and Dante's Inferno. I integrated all of that.
See, he says little things like, perhaps I even understood, which just doesn't make me think egomaniac at all. He's so timid about taking a I know everything type stance.
That for better or worse, trying to address a perplexing problem, the reason or reasons for the nuclear standoff of the Cold War. I couldn't understand how belief systems could be so important to people that they were willing to risk the destruction of the world to protect them. I came to realize that shared belief systems made people intelligible to one another, and that the systems weren't just about belief. People who live by the same code are rendered mutually predictable to one another.
See, and that same code would be like there's a SJW belief system, and there's an anti-SJW belief system. And this renders us able to communicate with one another, not to offend each other's sensibilities.
Yeah, this is basically morality binds and blinds.
It's all the way. Totally. This is one, I don't know that I agree with Jordan Peterson on the solution to the problem, but he understands the problem. He understands it very well. I'm curious if Hugo and Jake even cover this stuff in their video, but I honestly doubt that they do. There's some deep stuff here.
Act in keeping with each other's expectations and desires. They can cooperate. They can even compete peacefully because everyone knows what to expect from everyone else. A shared belief system, partly psychological, partly acted out, simplifies everyone, in their own eyes and in the eyes of others. Shared beliefs simplify the world as well, because people who know what to expect from one another can act together to tame the world. There is perhaps nothing more important than the maintenance of this organization, this simplification. If it's threatened, the great ship of state rocks. It isn't precisely that people will fight
key.
for...
Yeah, totally. So he's worried about the polarization, the same exact thing that Jonathan Haidt is worried about, the political polarization. And I mean, I've been on Twitter all day with people taking pot shots at me because I've said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing. So Durkheim called it normlessness or anomie. It's very difficult to operate in a world where you don't even know the rules. And this is one of the problems with the whole pronoun issue, because and Hugo and Jake brought it up in their first video. They basically said, if you don't use someone's preferred pronouns, you're an asshole. That is a complete break from the norm, the social rule that many of us have had our entire lives. You want to say something, Reid?
Yeah, and if we're talking to Hugo and Jake here, I'll try and translate this into atheist speak so they are not so triggered. So I originally came into some of these ideas through Sam Harris and the moral landscape, and he's basically saying specific ideas have specific consequences, and that it's very difficult to mix different value systems. We have a moral landscape, like different peaks and different valleys. The two different peaks aren't compatible. They have different belief systems. They're different value structures, and they don't really mix, kind of like how you can't mix the US road system with the UK road system. Everybody would just be running into each other, like one's on the left side, one's on the right side. So it's very crucial to not mix these types of value systems, or else we'll get a lot of chaos.
And we are getting a lot of chaos. I mean, and this is also the morality binds and blinds thing, because the value system that binds them together, they're also blind to other value systems. And you see that in the people that are just saying, Peterson's a right-wing conservative and just dismissing him out of hand. Like, they don't really even understand what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So
what they
in
believe.
A completely
Go ahead.
unrelated note, in my recommended feed, a video just popped up. It says, "Why I Took So Long to Realize I'm a Trans Lesbian" by Riley J. Dennis. And I immediately thought of you, friend.
Oh my God. I'm planning on doing some videos on why I'm so against the transgender thing. So get ready to be triggered.
I'm ready.
Oh, man.
They will fight instead to maintain the match between what they believe, what they expect, and what they desire. They will fight to maintain the match between what they expect and how everyone is acting. It is precisely the maintenance of that match that enables everyone to live together peacefully, predictably,
Somebody say something?
No.
and productively. It reduces uncertainty and the chaotic mix of intolerable emotions that uncertainty inevitably produces. Shared belief systems, shared systems of agreed upon conduct and expectation, regulate and control all those powerful forces. It's no wonder that people will fight to protect something that saves them from being possessed by emotions of chaos and terror, and after that from degeneration into strife and combat. There's more to it, too. A shared cultural system stabilizes human interaction, but is also a system of value, a hierarchy of value, where some things are given priority and importance, and others are not. In the absence of such a system of value, people simply cannot act. In fact, they can't even perceive, because both action and perception require a goal, and a valid goal is, by necessity, something valued. We experience much of our positive emotion in relation to goals. We're not happy, technically speaking, unless we see ourselves progressing, and the very idea of progression implies value.
What do you think Hugo and Jake's goal is with their series?
To ridicule Peterson because he's a Christian?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right on the money.
Christians are big, stupid, poopy heads. That's the goal.
Worse yet is the fact that the meaning of life without positive value is not simply neutral. Because we are vulnerable and mortal, pain and anxiety are an integral part of human existence. We must have something to set against the suffering that is intrinsic to being. We must have the meaning inherent in a profound system of value, or the horror of existence rapidly becomes paramount. Then nihilism beckons, with its hopelessness and despair.
So TJ Kirk, I think, is actually doing a video series on this where he's promoting nihilism.
Oh, jeez.
Which is rather hilarious. Yeah. Go out and be nihilistic, boys. That'll be great.
So, no value, no meaning. Between value systems, however, there's the possibility of conflict. We are thus eternally caught between the most diamantine rock and the hardest of places.
Yeah, see, and this is, I think deep down, Hugo and Jake are like, they don't like religion because it separates people into groups. And particularly, I don't think they like the way religion frowns on the LGBT community, which I can understand and I'm completely sympathetic towards.
Well, no, number one, it's not true. I think that's the reason why.
Well, but if they're going off of, so you think that the truth is the highest value for them?
For them, yes.
Okay, but they make so many comments about LGBT stuff in their other
videos. and it causes harm.
Right. Okay.
They're SJW types. They're not just anti-religion, right?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, in this video, they seem like they're ragging on Peterson for being, anti-women.
Yeah, which is totally SJW territory. And they pretty much say in the first video that we watched that if you don't call somebody Z or Zer, you're an asshole. So.
Loss of group-centered belief renders life chaotic, miserable, intolerable. Presence of group-centered belief makes conflict with other groups inevitable. In the West, we have been withdrawing from our tradition, religion, and even nation-centered cultures, partly to decrease the danger of group conflict. But we are increasingly falling prey to the desperation of meaninglessness, and that is no improvement at all. While writing Maps of Meaning, I was also driven by the realization that we can no longer afford conflict. Certainly not on the scale of the world conflagrations of the 20th century.
So now he's drifting into Sam Harris territory all the way. Like Sam Harris is actively worried about artificial intelligence supplanting us. He's done many talks about it. This is the same kind of thing that Peterson's talking about. Man Faces World says there is no explorative thinking, questioning, no intent to learn beyond bias, openness to Jordan B. Peterson's ideas, just circular reasoning around their truth. Yeah. And their truth, I think, is that the world would be a better place without religion, the standard anti-theist line that I'm always harping on about.
Our technologies of destruction have become too...
Go ahead.
And, that anti-theist line, the world would be a better place without religion. I'm mostly in agreement with that. It just depends on how you replace religion and what God is doing for people.
Sorry, go ahead, Sish.
I was just snapping my hands. I wasn't doing anything.
What do you say? Stop snapping. Is that you snapping over there?
I was cracking my knuckles.
Reid and I are actually supposed to do a debate on the religion and the usefulness of religion, whether or not we can replace religion with a secular ethical system. So, I mean, I am in disagreement with Reid on this topic, but we've obviously I'm interested in his perspective. He has more experience with Moral Landscape. I read the Moral Landscape and I just thought it was a terrible book, but Reid sat me down in a couple live streams and overwhelmingly people said I walked away the loser. So.
So stay tuned for round 2 or 3 or whatever this Saturday.
But this time I'll cheat if I have to. I'll make the live stream go down.
How do you cheat?
Hey, my granddad used to say, if you're not cheating, you're not playing to win.
powerful. The potential consequences of war are literally apocalyptic. But we cannot simply abandon...
Oh, I'm sorry. This is so dour. We're sitting here
I told you you should
laughing.
start with the Jake and Hugo stuff.
He's talking about. We want to move over to the Jake and Hugo stuff. I think we've
let's
got
do that.
mostly what.
Yeah,
I
we
wanted to get
got
out of
it.
this
We got
part.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not even into
Hello
the video
everyone,
yet.
I'm
Jeez.
Hugo,
And I'm Jake.
and welcome to Hugo and Jake. Today we're beginning our actual series
Yeah.
on Jordan B. Movie Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos.
Yeah. It's got a few notations in yours.
Sanctimonious drivel. I got a super chat. Pog says anti-theism is like communism. Sounds great, but won't work for humans. That's right. You hear that, Reid?
I don't believe you.
And well, he paid money, so that means he's right.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't pay us any money.
Yeah. And I don't know what he means by anti-theism, but anyway.
And that's just the first chapter and the introduction. So, again, if you are a Jordan Peterson fan, if you've seen the last two videos we did, the first one discussing kind of how Peterson came to be in the public eye over the C-13 bill, and subsequently we responded to comments on that video because... well, you kind of act like when someone says something bad about Beyonce on Twitter.
Yes.
It's like that.
It's
He
the-
has his own beehive.
Bayhive.
No, that's a Bayhive. He's a Jordan B. Peterson. It's a Jordan Beehive Peterson. So,
So just so you guys know that we're all part of the beehive now. We only like Jordan Peterson because we're mindless cultists.
We need a good nickname for us.
anyway, this is us doing the overture, which is, in fact, just an introduction.
I literally, in my copy, just crossed out Overture and wrote Introduction. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see that, because,
Yeah,
frankly, it's an introduction. You don't need to...
So,
So why is he so offended by that?
I don't know. Like, what is the distinction he's trying to make?
You know, Quentin Tarantino, when he did Pulp Fiction, he came out and did like the chapters and things.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I thought it was cool, man. No one else was doing it. I think that's what Jordan Peterson is trying to do.
Yeah, but Quentin Tarantino didn't put overture. Okay, he put chapter. It's different.
Yeah, but he's doing a movie. That's technically not in a movie. Chapters are in books.
Oh my god.
He's breaking all the rules.
Peterson's a postmodernist. He's breaking the system.
Look at that. Oh, I'm sorry. No ad hominem, guys.
None.
here we go.
You know, it bothers me that they use that music, because that's the music that Andy Worski used to use at the end of all his videos. And it's like, what the fuck? You can't use the same song.
Does it makes you upset now? Now all those fond memories from Andy Worski's songs. Tainted.
Forever.
So first, what we're going to...
Hold on. Forget the book. First off, the target audience. Are you kidding me?
Of course, Peterson is at fault because he attracts, straight white males.
Oh my God.
talk about is who is Jordan Peterson targeting this book to?
Yeah.
Again, this is going to happen a lot in this book. Jordan Peterson does a good job of partitioning and keeping apart any ideas that if he put them too close to each other would make him look bad. Does that make sense?
It does.
He has idea apartheid going on, where he only puts his worst ideas one at a time in one section or another. So we're certainly going to pull from this book, but also some articles and stuff. Basically talking about who is Jordan Peterson talking to when he's talking to the reader of this book.
Yeah, and so very early on, the first thing he talks about in this book, we mentioned it briefly in the video prior, is he talks about Quora, the online basically question and answer forum, in which he was very happy with getting a, quote, 99 percentile positive answer on Quora, which is basically the proto version of what we're reading in this book. It was like, okay, what are some facets of life that one should cling to? And, you know, some of them, he says, are tongue-in-cheek, some of them are whatever.
Notice the word cling. They're not useful ideas. They're whoobies.
This is kind of like a little window into his personality. He plays the humble guy. He constantly says,
He plays the humble guy. Just, it's all an act.
Well, even before that, they were saying, oh, you know, he purposely structures it so that he spreads his bad ideas apart. You know, this is all part of Jordan Peterson's plan.
Jonathan Haidt structures his book with moral psychology in mind, and he tries to be as non-incendiary in the first third of the book. I mean, his idea is pretty radical, so he amps up the radicalness of it a little bit at a time. It's so awesome that Jordan Peterson just comes out and is like, guess what? Feminine chaos. It's like, just burn it down. Like, Jordan Peterson knows the moral psychology, but my question is that I would have to just look. Well, Jonathan Haidt's book was a bestseller, so I don't know. I guess I would have to see the numbers by comparison to see which is the better way to go, the better marketing route. Although I
mean, I would be surprised considering, you know, all the publicity Peterson's been getting, which Haidt hasn't been getting.
Yeah, but it was totally accidental. If there's no telling where his book would be at if the Kathy Newman interview didn't take place, and that's completely unplanned.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's it. Like, a moment happened, and the SJWs were so in the bubble.
Well, it was weird because it's like, it seems like all the media news people, like, they knew about him before the Kathy Newman interview. They just were like, we're just not going to talk about him. We'll just keep him hidden. And then that, like, forced them to talk about him.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want the spotlight.
There's a hit piece every day.
What, Reid? Go ahead.
Now there's a new hit piece every day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. This one is the hit piece. These guys are doing a 14-part hit piece.
Burdened with it. Therefore, I ought to deal with it. Jordan Peterson, and this isn't a bad thing, for the record. This is just an observation. I don't think he minds the limelight whatsoever. And in fact, I think he relishes it quite a bit. But it's important for him to say that he doesn't. It almost martyrs himself in a way when he is the one.
So if the ideas that Jordan Peterson is talking about, the reason why he wants to have conversations with Sam Harris and other public intellectuals is because he's worried that we're approaching something cosmologists call the Great Filter. I've talked to you about this before, Sitch. Have I talked to you about this, Reid?
I know about this.
Like, in the beginning of the book, he's talking about how we approach nuclear annihilation during the Cold War, and how those potential worldwide catastrophes get closer and closer every year if we don't find ways around managing between group conflict. So his whole book is ideas about how we can manage between group conflict. Well, if you want to put your ideas out into the world about how to manage worldwide between group conflict, you're going to have to step out onto the stage. Am I incorrect?
So you're saying that SJWs are the great filter throughout all the universe.
The concept behind the Great Filter is when cosmologists look out into space, there's no extraterrestrial life, and with the way the universe is structured, we should see extraterrestrial life everywhere. So they've postulated that all of intelligent life reaches a technological point where they snuff themselves out. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the Great Filter. When Jordan Peterson talks about, and him and Sam Harris have talked about this in the first podcast on truth. A lot of people are talking about this in the context of artificial intelligence. Like, if we develop an artificial intelligence that is thousands of times greater than a human intelligence. I mean, theoretically, they could be looking out into space for the wrong kind of communications. Like life could be everywhere, but we are just at the level of ants compared to them. So we can't communicate with them because they're not interested in communicating with us. So, I mean, it's totally fascinating stuff. And the atheism that I grew up on was like, this was the interesting stuff that atheists like to talk about. Now it seems like maybe, I don't know, like gender pronouns is a thing, or it's kind of bizarro world. You guys are pretty quiet over there, man. What's going on?
Just waiting for the video to get into the meat of the video.
Up on
I'll
the
shut
milk, the soap crate, when he has to go out there and for the common folk, for the common man with a capital M, say things that, you know, otherwise less intelligent folks, air quotes, wouldn't be able to get across quite in the way that he can.
Here's a little taste of his humble being. So speaking about
Has
the list
Peterson
that
ever-
this book is actually based on, he says,
Has he ever complained about like being put upon and, you know, having to, you know, burden this responsibility? Because I've never heard him say that.
Not at all. He seems like the humblest person Did you see the video with him and Dave Rubin before his last show? The one that was on
No.
his channel?
A little bit of it.
It's an awesome video. You should check it out. Like you could tell he's psyching himself out to go out and talk to people. The guy is a clinical psychologist. Like he's been talking to people about their problems for 30 years, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and a professor.
Not only that,
Lectures.
yeah, they bring it up in here. They talk about how they're accusing Jordan Peterson of being cheated upon. I would be I'm just throwing this out there. But if you're a clinical psychologist, I'm going to guess maybe 40% of the talk people come to you and talk about, it's like somebody cheating on them. Like you would have a ton of experience with that. Jesus.
That was my exact thought. And I was like, he probably has so many clients talking about that.
Totally. New Renaissance, 25 PLN says trans YouTubers complain about demonetization. Ted Yasmin Green talks about jigsaw targeting extremists and AI still learning. Check it out. Hey, the AI is doing fine with my channel. I'm all in the green. I'm cool. I'm cool. I stay away from the trans issues. Man Faces World for $5 says, Overture, the Fedora atheists are intellectually superior. Theists and apologists are troglodytes. Fedora atheists hate that Jordan B. Peterson is an intellectual. I know. Staggering.
As the Quora readers appeared pleased with this list, they commented on and shared it. They said such things as, I'm definitely printing this list out and keeping it as a reference. Simply phenomenal! And you win, Quora. We can just close the site now. Students at the University of Toronto, where I teach, came up to me and told me how much they liked it. To date, my answer to, what are the most valuable things, has been viewed by 120,000 people and been upvoted 2,300 times. Only a few hundred of the roughly 6,000 questions on Quora have cracked the 2,000 upvote barrier. My procrastination-induced musings hit a nerve. I had written a 99.9 percentile answer, which is the quote you were talking about earlier.
This does a couple things. First, it illuminates the point I was making, that I'm pretty sure he really enjoys the limelight. Nobody hates being agreed with, especially someone who thinks they're...
Since you want to chime in, you feel an ad hominem coming on?
No ad out. They're just, it seems like they're just, you know, they're just jealous.
Simple jealousy.
Just simple jealousy.
as profound as Jordan Peterson. I can't imagine that you liking this video would make me uncomfortable. Does that make sense? Yeah. I enjoy that. We enjoy validation. There's nothing wrong with enjoying validation inherently. The other thing this does is it tells the reader...
Where's your butt? You forgot to give me your butt.
Passy McGee picture.
...of this book who's reading it now, other people like this, it's okay to like this. This is smart marketing. This is good, because what he's about to say in this book should be, to our audience, wildly unpopular. But apparently it isn't. He has some good ideas, I hear. He may be wrong sometimes, but he's right other times. But is he, though, audience? I don't think.
I hear you snickering.
You might be wrong sometimes, but right other times, like every other human being alive.
Totally.
So
that's a
so
common.
this is what persuasion people call priming. They're not really talking about the arguments themselves. They're just priming the audience to hear the arguments so they can be skeptical right up front.
Good
They're
point.
Scott Adaming us, was what's happening.
Are they doing
Yeah.
the exact same thing that they're accusing Peterson of?
Yes, exactly.
I didn't see a lot of priming in. Well, I guess technically Peterson is priming a little bit because he's talking about the popularity of the ideas, how much people liked it, which could be considered priming, but
Well,
I think
well,
his
this is the
problem-
introduction of his book. He wants to sell people on reading the rest of the book. If they're just
It's not an introduction; it's an overture.
yeah,
okay?
god damn it, get it right. Disrespecting Peterson. I'm calling your cult supervisor right after this call.
Think so? He goes on to talk about the concept of chaos. We're skipping forward, but we'll back up when we talk about the other topics here. He begins to talk about chaos because, of course, these 12 rules are indeed the antidote to chaos. And how he describes chaos is very interesting. Chaos to him is in the form, because, of course, he deals with ancient texts a lot of the time, most of which the Bible. He describes order as masculine. He describes chaos as feminine. And now,
Isn't it weird that they're? It's annoying that when Peterson says ancient texts, and if you've ever listened to him, he's talking about like every myth ever created, but they're like, no, he's just talking about the Bible.
He even goes, it's funny that he goes into the Bible and how the Bible is like a crowdsourced document. Like,
Right.
yeah, he's like, the Bible is like Wikipedia today.
Yeah, yeah. Like, is some religious zealot going to admit that the Bible was written by thousands or millions of different people over different time periods and all just stuck together?
An emergent document, he calls it. I don't know. Sounds pretty incendiary.
And when people try to say chaos equals femininity, whenever that comes up in interviews, he's always saying symbolically feminine. Like there is a distinction there. It's not equal to feminine, literally.
What are all the SJWs going to do with all these gendered languages around the world too? I mean, are we going to invade Mexico and get them to stop changing the conjugation of their verbs?
Latinx.
I guess.
at first glance, you could say that's not a big deal because, sure, some ancient cultures absolutely do that.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. That's fair. But the subtext here, because of who Jordan Peterson is, because of the content of his words outside of the beginning of this book, and
See, because of who Jordan Peterson is and the context around him.
That's why I called him the SJW detective in the thumbnail. 'Cause he's going out there digging up the dirt, man.
Yep. Though I will say I was trying to find his earlier maps and meanings about chaos and the feminine thing, and I'm not sure I agree with the idea that femininity should be symbolically represented by the chaos.
Are you going against Jordan Peterson?
I'm going against Jordan Peterson.
I don't know if I can handle. I'm feeling.
I'm not going to get my
triggered now.
check this week. This is madness. Because in his video about chaos, he talks a lot about how when you have a small child, they'll go off and explore kind of the chaotic world by wandering the room and seeing things they don't know. And then when they get scared, they run back to their mother, who's kind of like the stable base of order.
Right.
So it was weird because he was like talking about this for like 30 minutes, and it's like, oh, so it seems like mothers should be kind of representative of order. So I'm not 100% sure where the whole femininity represents chaos thing even comes from.
Well, I think he's talking about like Mother Nature.
Well, I don't know, because he was talking about how chaos. Well, that's another problem, is that when he says chaos, he doesn't mean it as an entirely negative thing.
No, not at all.
Which, yeah, but when you hear someone says chaos to 99.9% of the world, there's no good part of that.
Order and chaos is kind of the left and right spectrum too. If you think of anarchy as chaos and you think of totalitarianism as order, I mean, those are just the extremes of it. But the whole book,
Right.
I mean, the whole first chapter, he's talking about the the yin and yang, and the how the idea is to be between order and chaos. You know, the day and the night are not at war with one another. They're a balance. You've used that balance thing in videos of yours. So I mean, he's not saying either side is bad. He's saying that you need to strike a balance between the two. New Renaissance 10 PLN says the Chinese will never agree with the Beazu. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I'm a guy who says anecdotal. And what was the other one that and Jungian. Yeah.
Jungian.
Yeah. I say marijuana. So,
oh my God, what's wrong with you?
It's terrible. I got.
You said GIF the other day.
Anecdotal. Oh, it is GIF. We'll fight this out later.
Get the fuck out of here.
This book. This is geared toward anti-social justice, anti-feminist, young white guys, mostly young white guys.
Sorry, I can't contain myself. Can you imagine Jordan Peterson sitting down and going, I'm going to write a book for anti-SJW?
Gotta pwn the feminist.
Here, let me read every important research article written in the last 500 years so I can write a book. Come on. They think he's Deepak Chopra. They think he's like Ken Ham. It's hilarious.
Guys, doesn't have
If that's true, then he failed to do so, because I went to see him when he was in LA the last time he was here, maybe a month ago.
Uh-huh.
And that demographic was not entirely male at all. It was very diverse.
Uh-oh. You don't break their bubble, Reid. Come on.
But just if you take the anti-SJW and anti-feminist crowd, that's immediately who he's going for. And that's why that's in the book.
That is such a small demographic too. That's just like a tiny demographic.
Right.
Like, that's why immediately one of the first things he says is, by the way, it's okay to like this book. Next of all, femininity is inherently chaotic. And that's an issue not because...
Do you think that any women have influenced their thinking on this?
No. And he didn't even say that femininity is inherently chaotic. He didn't say that at all. But, they don't care.
It doesn't...
Not Jordan Peterson. I mean, these guys. I feel like there's like some nagging girlfriend in the background going, oh my God, I can't believe, oh my God.
You mean Sarah? Is that who you're trying to imply here?
God. Bad sitch.
It's on Twitter. It's public. Everyone can see it.
Does it seem like an issue, I guess, based on the way it's written, right?
Sure.
I can see how someone who isn't thinking about this would go into this thinking, okay, that's just a historical reference, that's fine. But he continues to expand on it. And if you, in fact, take context from other sources from Jordan Peterson himself, just outside of this book,
New York Times,
it becomes very clear who this is for and what his intention is.
Here's what he has to say on chaos and femininity. The state of order is typically portrayed symbolically, imaginatively, as masculine. It's the wise king and the tyrant, forever bound together, as society is simultaneously structure and oppression. What I find interesting about this is that he considers, even when he's talking about mythology, when he's talking about sort of these mythic ideals, which we're going to get into later, he describes, and his description inherently and his examples sort of tip a hand to his weird focus on masculine being ordered. He considers he talks about wise king and a tyrant, two sides of what I assume he would consider the same coin, but he doesn't consider tyranny inherently chaotic, despite the fact that certainly you could make a case for that.
Sure.
You guys want to hit that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's baffling that he just has no idea what the fuck Peterson's talking about.
Well,
about in terms of order and chaos.
Also, the tyranny is I think of tyranny as definitely on the right. I don't think of anarchy as tyranny.
Right. Yeah.
And it's both good and bad. Like, tyranny is bad. It's not completely good. These aren't binaries. Yeah.
Yeah. Order.
Well, I wonder
order going too far is tyranny.
Right. And I wonder if Peterson would be better served if he instead of saying chaos, he said disorder, or he said openness, or some other word besides chaos. just to quell the soy boys.
But that's but then we wouldn't like it. I mean, he's catering he's catering to us, the haters. Come on.
That's right, the evil sexist Nazis.
Somewhere, I mean, you could say it's some sort of authoritarian legalism, but even then, I feel like by describing it in such a way,
which is literally what tyranny is.
Yeah, this is the one spot that I immediately, this is where I kind of stopped watching, because I was like, oh my God, these guys don't even know like the left-right political spectrum, because they seem mystified by the fact that, I mean, like we had talked about the monk debate, and when Jordan Peterson throws out Auschwitz is when the right goes too far, the people on the left were like mystified. They were like, well, what? Auschwitz? What do you mean? I don't get it.
He's not a Nazi. He actually criticized them. What's happening?
The problem on the left, the problem that we face on the left is disillusionment from a growth of individualism that makes cooperation impossible. And that's a quote from Bertrand Russell. So, I mean, that's the problem on the left. The left is individualism. Everybody has their own gender, so you can't even put out an APB on a suspect anymore. Because it's like, we don't know what like what, it's like, that's chaos.
Showing that he certainly already has a preconception that he's going to put things into those boxes for, regardless of whether or not it is a black and white issue.
And of course, it's presuppositionalist inherently to put forth that either masculinity or femininity is one facet. He could have reversed those, and it would still be false.
Reid, presuppositionalist. I don't know what that means.
That's a kind of apologetics where they're basically. I don't see that connection at all. These are just axiomatic. That's what it means. Presupposition. It's like an axiom. It's a brute fact, and I think they're accusing Peterson of claiming chaos and order, or just presuppositions or axioms. But I think he's using these stories and myths from the past and finding patterns, and it seems to be that most times chaos is represented by feminine figures in art and story, and he's not axiomatically putting this forward. He's trying to look at the evidence and come up with a theory to explain the evidence.
Right. This has nothing to do with a value structure. Like, it's like a value would be that it's like it has to be that way, right? He's not saying that. He's just saying that's descriptively the way it is.
He's describing phenomenon. Yeah.
Prospero 158 says, already I'll go ad hom. These two are worthy of a word. What the hell?
I have no idea.
Can you read the screen?
Back Geishink.
Is that German?
I hope so.
Okay. Thanks for the super chat.
Wait, so for the people who read the entire book of 12 Rules, does he come back to is there an importance to him bringing up the whole masculine feminine thing, or is it just something that he just says and then never expounds on?
It's just central to Jungian mythology, and even Joseph Campbell. This is the pattern that we see in ancient stories and myths.
Right, but I mean towards Peterson in terms of his book and what he's trying to help people do. Like, do they need to know that information? Like, does that tie into his messages of his rules for life?
It doesn't really seem to me that it's essential. It seems like it's clearly only descriptive. Like a woman could be masculine or a man could be feminine. I don't think he takes a position on that. And really, he's more interested in the order and chaos than he is in any individual. He doesn't come out. Well, I guess he does give some. I haven't read the entire book. Reid, you said you've read the entire book, so. I defer to you.
It's been a while. I don't remember exactly.
I'm just wondering if he would have been better served to just not even bring it up, if it's not like super relevant to what he was trying to say.
But he's getting all this free press out of it.
I mean, that's a good point.
I mean, who am I to, I mean, he's doing something right. So, New Renaissance 25 PLN says, since there are more the two genders, drop the B from LGBT. Check Twitter for the number equal profit.
They've been trying to do that, I think. Isn't it supposed to be like LGBT now for pansexual or something?
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness.
I wouldn't be surprised. I might have just made that up.
If it's bisexual, that means there's two genders, so it can't have bi in there.
Oh, no.
Because of the inherent, just like, non-conformity, non-homogeneity of those two facets of human beings.
Sure.
Those don't necessarily denote any part of your personality whatsoever. They just happen to be part of who you are, socially speaking.
Sure.
Prospero says that the long word means punchable face. Just to settle the mystery.
He goes on to say, chaos is what emerges more catastrophically when you suddenly find yourself without employment or are betrayed by a lover.
He'll mention this more than once. I think JBP's been cheated on.
Again,
not a great feeling.
No, it's not, and he's not wrong. But again, it's such an odd thing that he brings up twice. Like
in the introduction, he brings it up twice. Again, leading me to believe, and I think this is founded by evidence based on the rest of the book and his other speeches and his fan base in general, and the way he talks about feminists in general, is it's throwing women under the bus on purpose
to make young men feel better about their lack of interaction with the opposite gender.
Now, I know what you're going to say, Jordan Peterson fan. Men can also cheat on women, and women can identify with that passage, absolutely. But if you're going to argue with me, he's not aiming this at a particular.
I hear you laughing, Sitch.
I understand that you're going to say, well, men can cheat on women, but look, just trust me. I know that Jordan Peterson is really aiming this at incels.
Amazing.
Peniled version of humans. Then we're not reading the same book.
He continued.
We've already said it too. Jordan Peterson's a clinical psychologist. When you go to see a therapist, a lot of times you go to see a therapist because your marriage is on the rocks, or you're having trouble with your kids. Like, this has got to come up all the time in his therapy.
Right.
As the antithesis of symbolically masculine order, it's presented imaginatively as feminine. It's the new and unpredictable suddenly emerging into the midst of the commonplace familiar. It's creation and destruction, the source of new things, and the destination of the dead. Okay. He goes on also. In the recent New York Times article that was pretty popular on Twitter, you can find it. Just Google New York Times Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to bring that up?
They just pulled a Michelle Goldberg.
They did. So this New York Times article is basically just a hit piece.
He expands upon this by saying, you can say, well, isn't it unfortunate that chaos is represented by the feminine? Well, it might be unfortunate, but it doesn't matter, because that's how it's represented.
Do you see what he does there? He gives himself an out. He says it is indeed unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's a fact. It's an unfortunate fact that femininity is not only shown to symbolically represent chaos, but that it also is chaos. It introduces chaos into the world, which to me, that's the gayest shit I've ever heard.
What's that?
That's completely not what he said. Like, he just put his own interpretation on that and just completely spun it.
Yeah.
And chaos isn't inherently bad either.
Right.
What's the real interpretation, Sitch?
Well, just Peterson just said, well, I didn't choose to make femininity be associated with chaos. Like, that's what it is according to all these myths. But then I don't know which one's Hugo and which one's Jake, but the guy on the left is like, and then Peterson transforms it to be, you know, that's why women are inherently chaotic, which is not anything that what Peterson said at all.
Yeah, not only that, who is Jordan Peterson to change something that he's already said has been crowdsourced for, you know, millennia? Like,
right. And it's annoying too when people keep quoting the New York Times article, because it's like this woman followed him for 2 days and she took like these tiny paragraphs out in an article. So we have no idea what, like, he could have talked to her an hour about, you know, the origin of femininity becoming chaos, and we would have no idea.
no, he just recently did an interview where he actually said that's exactly what he did, that she knew exactly what he was talking about. And I went and I pulled a video of her doing a live stream. She's actually the same woman that wrote the hit piece on James Damore.
Really?
And she's a tech writer. Yeah, she's a tech writer in Silicon Valley. She's got no experience in evolutionary psychology. And not only that, she seems like a total dingbat. Like, you can go ahead and watch the video, but she doesn't seem very bright to me. So she seems like a valley girl. I mean,
You're just saying that because you're a man.
Hey,
and you're a
like,
misogynist.
If she wants to have a live stream with me and talk about evolutionary psychology, I'm happy to do it. I'm not like,
Send her a tweet.
If she wants to best me in the intellectual ring, like, bring it on. But I mean, I know how those jobs go. I know how people get those jobs. Sometimes it's not merit-based.
He also says the left, he believes, refuses to admit that men might be in charge because they're better at it. The people who hold that our culture is an oppressive patriarchy, they don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence, he said. And again, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about his separation of his bad ideas far enough apart that hopefully you can't put them together and come to his actual conclusion that he's coming to, unless you read a lot of his stuff and put it together as a fan of his.
Watch a lot of his talks, a lot of his debates, a lot of his interviews.
Is there any?
So you see right there.
Is there anyone that criticizes Peterson that doesn't say that he has some sort of secret dog whistling message? Because that seems like that's what every single person says.
Yeah, definitely. And they come to it. We have this confirmation bias that they were probably introduced to well, I don't know when they were introduced to Peterson. I'm going to guess maybe they were introduced with the Sam Harris podcast because they're atheists. I think that might even be how I became to be familiar. Jordan Peterson came out of the pronouns thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the Sam Harris podcast was the first time that I ever really started paying attention to them. I'd be interested to know when they first became associated with them. But obviously, a lot of people come to view him. You know, a friend tells them, you know, this guy's an alt-right, intellectual, misogynistic, racist pig, right? So then that colors the way they look at everything that he says and does. And he does say a lot of things that are difficult to discern. I recently went back and listened to that podcast with Sam Harris, the first one on truth, and man, it is amazing. That thing is amazing. And the first time I listened to it, I thought Sam Harris won hands down. The second time I listened to it, I thought there's something here, man. Jordan Peterson gave him a run for his money.
If we go from the book, which came before this interview,
yeah.
The book starts out with the concept that femininity and masculinity are diametrically opposed. One is order, one is chaos. But now you're getting to the part where he's just kind of coming out and saying it, that men are just better at leading the world.
Yeah.
They provide order. Women.
Go ahead, Reid.
I mean, that is nowhere near anything he's saying. I don't know where they get that.
Yeah, I mean,
well, Peterson says that, you know, it could be that hierarchy structures are based on competency, and Jordan Peterson believes that men should run hierarchies. Therefore, in their minds, men are better at running the world than women.
He does talk, and I don't think it's actually in the overture where he goes through and he talks about men competing in hierarchies and women competing in hierarchies, and that if a man can't compete in the women's hierarchy because he can't win. Like if you beat a girl, you look like a putz, and if you lose to a girl, it's even worse. but he's like, but women can compete in the men's hierarchy, because if they compete in the men's hierarchy and win, they gain respect in the women's hierarchy, which is it's an asymmetrical situation. Which, I mean, truth. I've been on it's been a long time since I was in a schoolyard, but I remember how the schoolyard worked. So,
are you saying you got beat up by a girl?
oh, no way. Are you kidding me? Like you can't win. You totally can't win. You got to stay away from the girls.
Women are
So are you
chaotic.
becoming a MGTOW?
I'm sick of your ad hominem. How do I kick this guy?
He'll also say something to the effect of women find more agreeable jobs and stuff like nursing and caretaking because they're really good at that stuff, whereas men are more apt to be, leaders in the workplace. Jordan Peterson is ignoring society as a whole in regards to this.
That's part of the key fuck up that people on the left always make is, he said, oh, Peterson's saying that women are good at nursing and good at taking care of people, when he never says it. He says women are more personality-wise attracted to those positions. He never puts any sort of value judgment of positive or negative on it.
Totally.
Goes back to Demore's capacity versus interest. It's the interest, not capacity.
Exactly.
He uses a good analogy in the book Why Gender Matters. He says, you can't think of it as one being better than the other. If you have a bowl of soup, a knife is going to be completely useless to you. And if you have a steak, a spoon is going to be completely useless to you. You got to have the right tool for the job, and male and female is that way. One of the things that I despise about this whole gender neutral idea is these guys don't even seem to be cognitive of the fact that there is gender differences. Like, they're teaching people now that there are no gender differences between men and women, and there are huge gender differences between men and women. Like, women are more likely, on average, to hold grudges. Like, it is what it is. But they've done research and found this. Like, men often bond. The behavior that men do to bond is not the way women bond. So when men and women interact, men will often act in ways that they perceive as playful ribbing, bonding, that kind of thing. And women will just be incensed by it. It's one of the reasons why I think there is so much miscommunication over the online bullying thing.
Right.
It's just miscommunication.
I'm sure if you rewind this, there is probably already a bunch of playful ribbing between us already.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And I remember in elementary school, there'd be situations where I'd get into fights, not physical fights, but, verbal fights with people. And then you end up becoming friends with them.
Totally. That's what they talk about in Why Gender Matters. This woman watched children on a school ground for a year. And she said that every time kids fought, when the boys fought, they ended up being better friends after the fight. And when girls fought, it was over. Like, they never talked to one another again. That's helpful to know, I think. And you deny it at your own peril.
It also shocks me that
I was watching the Evergreen fight. Did you watch that on Benjamin Boyce's channel, where the one white guy was fighting with I don't know if she's Latino or Asian, but she was like I was thinking about that. Like, you could tell the guy was like, okay, we had this exchange. He wasn't losing any sleep over it. Oh man, she's still thinking about it. Like, a year later, she's still going to be thinking about that exchange.
he considers nursing and...
I know that's totally sexist.
I was going to say, geez. You're saying that women are the weaker gender.
Guess what? Mother Nature's sexist.
An agreeable position. Has he met a nurse in his life?
Yeah, nurses are fucking also men as well. And I don't want to say that, he 100...
I went to the dentist the other day, a new dentist, and the dentist was male, and all the where the dental technicians were female. And I realized I've never encountered a female dentist, and I've never encountered a male dental nurse. I've seen female doctors, but I've never seen a female dentist.
I've met a female dentist, so.
Yeah, but you live in, liberal land.
Yeah, totally. We've had 20 years of gender-neutral child rearing.
My dentist is female.
Okay, so I guess I'm just a fucking weirdo. It's okay.
Sexist pig.
It's true.
Popog, $2. Autism is 80% men. BPD is vice versa. What's BPD? Bipolar disorder. Yeah.
Is that true?
Totally. Yeah, autism is a focus on things. Highly focused on things. To the point where you can't even interact socially. It's like, yep.
100% is saying that women shouldn't have leadership positions in corporate.
Oh my God. All you have to do is watch a Kathy Newman video to know that it's not what he thinks. Right?
Yep.
America and the private sector, whatever. Or, well, I guess in his case, North America, so Canada.
Sure.
But
his
fan base...
He begs the question a lot. That's his problem.
That's his thing.
He brings up points and he alludes and dances around the subject to the point that it becomes obvious to anyone who isn't being intentionally obtuse what he's getting at. Yeah. And that's why he has such a huge incel follower base. And I'm not saying that's even the majority of his fans. I don't think it is. I think they're the extreme.
Reid?
A huge incel follower base. Where did they get this? Where did they get this from?
Yeah, I'm happily married, so just so you know.
Or you would want us to believe that.
Yeah, well, Sitch is going to is coming out to VidCon, so you'll probably get to meet my wife. Carl's Jr. for $5.
You mean the woman you're paying to pretend to be your wife?
Oh yeah. Who I'm gonna get to meet the person that you're pretending to be you.
That's a good point.
Carl's Jr. for $5 says, I get the feeling this entire video is just going to be these two fedora lords projecting their insecurities and tactics onto Jordan B. Peterson. Feminists equal rapists. I didn't say it as super chat. I was like, seriously.
Well, I have a spoiler warning for Carl Jr. You're right.
Oh, shit. This is why I couldn't. I was like, I can't watch this alone. Oh, my God. I'm going to be tearing my hair out.
Someone said earlier that the BPD thing we're wrong. It's not bipolar. It's borderline personality disorder.
Right, yeah.
Which made more sense to me. Because I was like, I actually know some bipolar men.
Version of it. But, I mean, this is the last quote I'll read from the article for this episode. But this one goes a long way to explaining the mentality
this is the New York Times
of some of his fan base, let's say. It made sense in a primordial way when he...
Don't these guys... aren't atheists supposed to know their fallacies, too? Because isn't this just guilt by association fallacy?
Yeah.
Only when it serves them.
Breaks down Adam and Eve, the snake and chaos, Mr. Ausyarr says. Eve made Adam self-conscious. Women make men self-conscious because they're the ultimate judge. I was like, wow, this is really true, end quote.
That's a fan?
That's a fan. That's a
fan quoting Jordan Peterson and then himself being quoted.
If you consider women to be the ultimate judge...
This is one of the reasons why I didn't want to get the book, because like the Bible totally bores the hell out of me. Jordan Peterson is actually an amazing writer. Like, the book is actually very good. I'm totally impressed.
If you are any one group of people that makes up 50-something% of the population, if you consider an entire group of people the ultimate judge of you, they are not. You have self-image problems, and this is something Jordan Peterson will not help you address. If anything, he's going to dig you into a trench so deep your room's going to be full of just pee bottles and Mountain Dew.
I don't understand why everyone fixates on that one passage. Because all he's saying is that as a guy, you view women as the ultimate judge because biologically, if you're straight, you're trying to find a mate and they're judging you. And we're animals, and men have to put on their little mating dance, and then women choose you. So, I mean, why is that such they can't put that in their brain, I don't know. I don't understand.
I want to hear like how he met his girlfriend, like what the mating dance was. Like, I remember the mating dance when I met my wife. It's like, yeah, you're right on the money. Exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah. And since we are apes, and when we evolved from apes, like apes, the men competed with each other, and the top man would get pretty much all the women. So that's our evolutionary history.
That's why,
right there.
That's why we're more violent. Yeah, it's like that's another thing, because the atheists all the way back, it's like evolution was how we fought the creationists. Like now we're just throwing evolution out the window or something. Like I was kind of married to this whole evolution idea. Man Faces World for $2 says the fan was talking about selector theory. I'm curious now. I don't. Selectorate theory is from the Dictator's Handbook, so.
You cleaned your room,
They'll
bucko.
be very organized pee bottles, but it's not a good place to go. Just maul swords and pee bottles.
See, what he does, though, to get his very conservative viewpoints across to people is he frames the opposition, the left, as the most extreme versions of the concept of leftism.
Yeah.
A moment of silence for the irony here.
So he'll always say that, like, for instance, he used the term the patriarchy earlier, where we are in a society where a patriarchal structure was left behind for us, and I think our generation, and maybe even the generation right before us, is doing...
Come on, if you're going to sigh, you got to say something.
It's just, never mind, go on. There's nothing to say.
a pretty good job where we don't really consider it very much, but of course there's still lattice work, and the same thing is true of African Americans in the country, where there's still...
Hey, people of color, man. They changed that. The fuck?
Black neighborhoods, and it was due to segregation, but it's also because like people own those homes now. Now there's black neighborhoods, and it's kind of...
Look at that. He's like, well, why are we talking about the black thing now? He's like, you're true. Oh, don't.
He's like, Hugo, shut up.
He's like, turn it around here. Turn it around.
The left, it's a remnant of that time where we don't have segregation anymore. Now it's just sort of an accidental societal structure.
It's de facto.
Yes.
There's cultural and socioeconomic ramifications of things that are still echoing today, despite the fact that in the law it has been corrected.
Correct. So when far left people are...
So this is a good way to tell how different these two different ways of thinking are. Peterson thinks in terms of evolutionary timescales, and this is super recent history.
Yep.
It completely different things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Are like the patriarchy. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes there is that structure. Other times it's definitely not the case. And so when he attacks is probably a strong word. When he heavily implies that you ought to feel a certain way about that mindset, and then counters with what seems to be reasonable because it's so disparate and far apart from itself, it makes you go, so Jordan Peterson's reasonable. So conservatism is reasonable. Puts on the MAGA hat.
What? When has Jordan Peterson ever advocated for like a conservative social program or political policy or anything? When has he advocated for any political policy?
He's done talks on conservatism and liberalism. He definitely feels like liberalism is the side that's going off the rails now. Like he doesn't feel like even in the Monk debate, he talked about, when does the right go too far, when does the left go too far. Ethno-nationalism is definitely going too far on the right, and he's condemned that, even though they want to throw him into that camp. But the to be determined on when the left has gone too far. You never answered in the Monk debate either, which
Right,
was
but
a 5-hour talk, and people are watching that whole thing.
I never answered what.
When the left goes too far.
Oh, but no, I understand that he criticizes the left for that stuff, but I can't recall Peterson ever advocating for like a specific Republican or conservative
No, not at all.
like platform or issue ever.
No, he doesn't take he's a centrist all the way, middle of the road.
He also should.
But you realize most of these far left individuals think centrist is secret right winger.
Yeah, of course.
Like
Some 1950s housewives in there. We'll get to that at some point.
that's another thing when I brought up the morality binds and blinds. Like binds people into a shared moral community with shared right and wrong, shared ethics, shared ways of talking, shared do's and don'ts. Like, but it also blinds them to any evidence about why that is their thinking is completely ridiculous. This is why we'll never actually be able to get through to Hugo and Jake, because and this is one of the reasons, just on a deeper level, why I think the atheist community is so upset about Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson is putting this idea out there. Like, a lot of them, their number one idea, like the goal that they're working towards, is eliminating religion. Like, they think the world would be a better place without religion. That's something that they believe. And that belief is what unites them into a community. And that idea has kind of become sacred to them. Like, it's an idea that you just don't question. And the Peterson and other people are out there actively questioning that idea, which is, if that idea is overturned, that destroys the community, right? Like, if it's the same thing. Like, if the Pope came out and said, Jesus really wasn't the Son of God, it's like a lot of people are going to be pissed off. It's going to break the community up. They're going to go from order to chaos.
Well, do you think nowadays, in modern times, that, if religion just disappeared, I'm not sure that I agree that, it'd be catastrophic. I think it was more necessary in the past.
I think religion is disappearing and is being replaced by social justice. That's what I think. And I think social justice is 10 times worse because it's not a coherent value system.
Well, is it being replaced by social justice or just politics in general?
Either or. I mean, a lot of people are developing their own personal ethic, their own personal ethos. And those ethos are, everybody having their own personal ethos does not make a community. Like, disillusionment. I mean, in the ancestral environment, if we had the kind of political polarization that we have now, like, we're just ripe targets for some other people to come in, like, look, they're all fighting, let's go subjugate them and take their women. It's like, that's how we evolved. Like, this is one of the reasons why you don't question the stability, like, questioning things. This is where blasphemy laws come from. Like, you don't question the ethic that's uniting our community together because we know that the community provides safety. But people don't think about this. It's all intuitive. It's all deep.
Right.
And this is the argument that Jordan Peterson makes. When he says most people don't know their implicit axioms, he means, like, you have a value system because you can't behave without a value system. And however you behave is the physical manifestation of that value system. So we can take you into the lab and we can watch you behave and we can figure out what that value system is. And I get in trouble all the time for saying, like, I point out that, okay, if you believe that the world would be a better place without religion, that creates behavior that makes that your value system. Pi Pog for $2 says human brains are built to do religion. Yeah. See, that's my beef with Reid, because, well, I think actually Reid agrees with me on that.
I agree, but religion doesn't mean the same thing to most people as, like, we think of religion. Like, we think of religion as just moral community. It's a big moral community.
But think of
it's around a set of values.
Think of what Brett Weinstein says, though. Like the metaphorical, Brett Weinstein talks about metaphorical truth, and metaphorical truth is a truth that if you believe to be true and act as though it is true, you'll put yourself and your genes in a better survival and reproductive situation. So, but what you're talking about, what people like Matt Dillahunty are talking about, and maybe Hugo and Jake as well, is that we don't need to believe. We could just act in the way that will give us the evolutionary advantage without actually believing it. But I'm not sure that you can, because part of what atheists don't understand is that God is not, like, God is a cop on the beat. And what you're doing is you're saying we don't need any cops. And I don't know that I believe that.
I think we have institutions that replace the need for that type of thing nowadays. So, like, at the beginning of Stephen Pinker's new book, Enlightenment Now, there's a quote that everything that is not forbidden by laws of nature is achievable given the right knowledge. So that's, I think, is the core value of the atheist, or like just scientific community. Mm-hmm. We think we just need to figure out reality as best we can, and then we can achieve pretty much anything we want within the laws of nature. So progress is achieved through our knowledge of reality.
Look at it like the placebo, though. Like if you think of religion as a placebo for society, like if you're a doctor and you're giving a placebo to a patient, you have to lie. Like if you tell the patient, hey, this is a placebo, but placebos work, does the placebo work anymore?
In a limited case.
It's not going to work with me. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, I realize that it's not the most comfortable idea in the world.
I don't think we need to lie to ourselves to have sufficient human flourishing.
That's a belief. I want citation needed. I want your evidence.
Yeah, we'll talk about this on Saturday.
All right, we'll continue.
Oh, there was another super chat, I think.
Did I miss one?
Man Faces World for $2. Friended, how dare you mock the 72 gender religion?
See, that's what I'm talking about, man. Are you kidding me? They're building they're building a gender neutral religion that's has all the same properties as a religion. It's based on complete nonsense.
Right.
And and it hasn't been tested by it's not an emergent property. I mean, it's an emergent property of the last 15 minutes of human history on the internet. It's like and not only that, people are acting out that philosophy now. Like search, do you have to have dysphoria to be trans? And do a little reading.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah, you think, and these, like Hugo and Jake are out there telling people how dangerous Christianity is. I'm like, dangerous Christianity? They're talking about shit that happens after you're dead. Like, how is that dangerous?
I mean, I think a lot of it's just the historical Christianity, which has fucked us over for so long, and they're stuck looking back.
Oh my God, it's the same thing Tyson was talking about.
Right.
Dyson, sorry. Street Socratics? Street Socratics says, Reid has it right. The narrative to follow can be religious, but religion isn't always the narrative. We'll see. We'll see. I'm skeptical.
Well, you think you're just some special guy, friended, that you are the only one that doesn't need religion to be an ethical, moral person?
Go ahead.
Good.
No, you go.
Well, Haidt talks about America was a kind of religion that the founding fathers created. Totally. We told a myth about ourselves and about this new place, and that we all are created equal, and we made these ideas, and then we all shared them. And people coming from all over the world could be American. This is our superordinate identity. which let us bind together.
It's true. I just on me and ethics, I was socialized as a Christian. So right now, I mean, I consider myself ethical kind of habitually.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I constantly wish that I could be not ethical. Because you can, like, there's a lot of places where, I don't know, I can't, what is the name of that book? It's the book that was written by the guy who did Cocaine Cowboys. They did the movie Cocaine Cowboys on. And that guy is like, he is the ultimate badass. And his ethos is like lie, cheat, steal. Like that's his ethos. And the one time he disobeys his ethos and he tries to do the right thing, it totally screws him over. And he makes a pretty compelling case for like, that's a good ethos. So, I mean, but it wouldn't.
Free riders do exist.
They do, man. They do. I couldn't do it.
Right, but of course he's, perceiving it through his narrow lens. So of course he's going to, self-validate his belief system.
Read that book, man. That guy gets like he's got a private jet. Like he's doing good.
So as we promised, as a channel that largely deals in the religious and religious books, maybe you've heard of the Atheist Bible Study. It's a thing we do.
Oh, I wasn't.
So why are they doing this book? This isn't a religious book.
Yeah, anyone heard of that thing?
No.
I got accused of just only doing this to, beg for attention from these guys. So
They're very popular.
Yeah. So this book is indeed very, very heavily steeped in religion, and a lot of Jordan Peterson fans in our previous video like cringed at that because they didn't believe that to be the case. They didn't think that this book, indeed, the one that you have colored in at least as much as your copy of the Bible, doesn't have this religious iconography. However, if you read the foreword, which is not Jordan Peterson's, the first thing that pops up is an allegory about Moses and the sacred golden calf, and how, rules were meant to shrug off rules. Humans' natural instinct when met with rules is to not follow them, which maybe I can agree with, but I also don't totally agree with that. And he'll go on to expand on that thought by saying a phrase that he will say in this book just so many times, and that is the great stories of the past. A phrase that is just a very thin veil over saying biblical Christianity. And now he'll go on to...
This is another idea that I see in a lot of anti-theists. Like they have a belief that religion is a deception, that people are deceived by religion, that it's a virus, right?
An intentional deception.
Yeah, an intentional deception. Which if somebody has that idea, it's very hard to present any kind of evidence to get them past that idea. Like they're just going to go with that idea. And it completely taints a lot of the ways that they look at all this stuff. Popog says, for $2, is the 72 genders religion a free rider? I don't believe so. I believe that the 72 genders religion is forming out of people that are disaffected by religion because they're LGBT activists, and religion. I think they don't like that religion has some disdain for LGBT, the gay community. Jenny Kiss, what's up, Jenny? $2 says, where are the tears? That was a joke. I wasn't actually going to be crying.
We have to keep saying mean things to you until you cry.
I am not going to cry. Like, this is all total.
But if we talk about the plight of the young male incel, won't that make you tear up like Jordan Peterson?
Poor guy.
Though
I
I
might feel
think
bad. Actually, I might feel bad about incels. I do. I just did a video talking about how, like, we live in a polygynous society now. We really do. The whole idea behind serial monogamy is polygyny, and polygyny hurts males more than anything.
because of fucking Grindr and Tinder and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of a screwed up environment for dating. I'm glad I'm not on the dating scene.
Though I don't know if I'd call it a free rider, but I do think that the non-binary genders is only able to exist because it completely latched onto people with gender dysphoria. And since it falls under that label of trans, and people don't realize that, when most people hear trans, they just think, Caitlyn Jenner. So they kind of got to sneak in under, the public knowledge and get acceptance that way.
So it is a free rider. It totally is a free rider. Free riders
Sure.
are taking advantage. I say that all the time, that free riders are taking advantage of the trans thing to up their celebrity. Man Faces World for $2 says, anyone read works of psychologist Clay Rutledge? I have not. Have you guys?
I follow one on Twitter. I might have. I don't know.
Sitch doesn't read anything.
That's true.
It's really
I've been reading. I only read when I'm at a doctor's office, and I've been reading Guns, Germs, and the Steel for like 2 years.
Oh my god, so have I. Are you kidding me? Like,
Everyone has.
every once in a while I go in and I'm like, yeah. I'm going to finish this Jordan Peterson. I'm definitely going to finish this Jordan Peterson. It's very interesting.
Cite some other sources like, oh, I read other old books and other, indigenous stuff and Roman, but mostly the Bible. And
I love, one of the things that I love about the book is he's quoting Dostoevsky and all that. I think it's fascinating. I've never read Dostoevsky, so I never read nonfiction, or I never read fiction. I only read nonfiction. So
it's shocking to me that you, as a reader, if you are indeed a Jordan Peterson fan and an atheist, don't immediately cringe at that, because I'm assuming most of his fans, if they are atheists, are apostates.
Sure.
Because what this does is it takes something very familiar to you, a list of core tenets, and it says, I'm not religious, but boy, doesn't it feel comfortable to read this book and have something laid out for you? And also, it does this thing where he says you take responsibility for your actions, stand up straight, clean your room, speak with intent.
Yeah.
But every time one of those things comes
did you
up,
see what happened there? Did you see that?
femininity
No, what
is a
happened?
problem.
He said, stand up straight, all that. And the other guy sat up like, oh, yeah, I am. He's like, oh, yeah. Let me sit up. Priming
Or
works.
chaos is the problem.
Chaos is the problem, which is femininity.
Sure.
Like,
lack of societal.
he's like, you got to know. He's really dogless on the women there. Got to keep that in mind.
Cohesion as he goes down to talk about.
Which is chaos, which is femininity.
Yeah. Low place in social structure due to feminine rejection, which he gets into in the first chapter.
So what I'm saying is, he's not actually telling you to do anything other than blame others. I don't really know. He continues to say, if people really noticed what I was teaching, there'd be hell to pay.
What bugs me the most about that is that there is a literal emoticon at the end of that sentence, which
Yes.
I have never seen in a published work before. I'm sure it's happened. I don't need you in the comments to point to me the 70 books before this that have had an emoticon in the text. Don't do that.
Not cool, man.
These guys are authoritarians, aren't they? That's one of the things that I kind of disagreed with Jordan Peterson about authoritarians on the left, because I read a lot of the literature, and the authoritarian personality came out of the right-wing authoritarian personality. It's the RWA scale that they use to measure authoritarianism. But like, you look at these guys and I think, wow, there really is there are leftist authoritarians.
Well, you saw earlier they were trying to create kind of this distinction between, real atheists who are, full-on fedora tippers like them, and then like the kind of weak sauce atheists who are comforted by this kind of, old knowledge and familiarity of Christianity.
It's not that. I think his ideas are super interesting. I think the idea of nesting truth, factual truth inside of wisdom is an interesting concept.
After that section,
I agree.
he'll talk about
Reid?
Yeah, we'll talk about that on Saturday.
the research he put into Mirrors of Meaning, which was the book that came.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that he keeps talking about, Mirrors of Meaning. What the fuck is he talking?
Is that another book, or is he just missaying Maps of Meaning?
He's missaying Maps of Meaning.
Okay.
He does it several times. Get ready. Let's take a shot every time he gets Peterson's first book wrong. You can tell this is such a well-researched video.
Came before this, which he constantly says is just a very dense book. It's got so much information. Again, it's very much like the Quora section of this book, where every time he mentions Mirrors of Meaning, it has to be this sort of like insurmountable intellectual jargon that the normal man can't wrap their head around. So he wrote this book to help you. That Mirrors of Meaning is for Jordan, for people of his ilk. He's the level 3 debater.
I think it's also a little more overtly religious than this book.
Oh, really? You wouldn't say. Quote, large research time spent on large sections of the Bible, Milton's Paradise Lost, Goethe's Faust, and Dante's Inferno. Now, if you don't know,
why did they skip the neuroscience and psychology part up there?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit the narrative.
We're gonna have here's a little introductory period on those things. So Milton's Paradise Lost is about Adam and Eve over the course of about 12 books of an epic poem. It's extremely dense, extremely long, and basically the thesis of that whole thing is to justify the ways of God to men. That is actually the thesis of the book of Book 1, written by Milton himself. In Goethe's Faust, it's based on an actual man. I think it's Johann Faust. He was a erudite. He was a person that had a lot of knowledge, a lot of history and science and all that. And over the course of the book, basically, it shows that he is more geared towards the human knowledge than the divine, and as such is damned. In Dante's epic poem Inferno, which is about Dante being guided through the nine circles
I have
of hell
something
by
very
Virgil,
important to say.
What?
I've read Dante's Inferno. That's a book I've read.
Did you understand it? Is it easy to read? Maybe I'll read it.
It's not easy to read.
Yeah, I try to read Camus every once in a while, and I think, wow, he goes for a long time without really talking about anything that has to do with the story.
Well, it's not that. It's that, like, you have to get one of those versions that has, the explanations now on the other side of the page, because it's like fucking, he's like referencing all this like contemporary political shit that, no one not alive knows what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah. Thank you, Jordan Peterson. Thank you for distilling it down to a book that I can understand. Man Faces World for $5.55 says, Dear Jake, obviously you like cheese, but please, Gouda is a famous Dutch cheese. Goeth in the famous German philosopher of Faust. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know what it means. I'm baffled. Can we get Peterson in here? Who speaks Man Faces World?
The ancient Roman poet, the first of the 3 books of the Divine Comedy, Purgatorio and Paradiso, following after. It's basically about the soul's, the actual physical soul's journey through the afterlife and eventually getting placed where it ought to be, and
Also
showing the when the bill comes due, basically.
Actually, I think he's saying Goethe is a German philosopher. He's saying that he doesn't know how to pronounce his philosophers. I figured it. I figured it out. Well, obviously, I don't know how to pronounce it.
drastically from your life.
Also, lots of concurrent Florentinian politics were involved in that book.
That's true, yes.
I've read it. A lot of that has footnotes where it's like, so you understand this reference. This is what was going on in the area at the time. This is who he's making fun of.
Yeah, so, he doesn't write out any books specifically that he read. He writes these, which are Christian fiction, but they're also heavily steeped in theology. And, like, if you've heard of, like, the fallen angel Satan before, it's because of these books, not because of the Bible. And it just informs where Jordan Peterson is coming from and kind of his worldview. He may not be overtly Christian. He may not even be Christian in the way that, like, a Christian would like one to be.
Sure.
He's Christian in that, like, oh, we go to church on Christmas Christian. We go to Life Church. You know what I mean? Like, when I raise my kids, we're going to go to a non-denominational, we have barbecues. You know, we're just like everyone else, but also, here's the rules to live your fucking life.
See, here, I think it's actually more insidious than that. I think it's even worse, because I think he's a worse brand of Christian than that. Because I think most people who do the non-denominational thing, at the very least, at the end of the day, they still think what they believe is somehow objectively real. I get the sense that most Christians, at the very least...
So does Jordan Peterson believe any of this is objectively real?
No.
Any what? Religion?
Yeah.
I think most Christians would think that you would need to believe in the literal resurrection of Jesus to be at minimum a Christian.
Right.
And I don't think Peterson literally believes Jesus literally was resurrected. It's completely a myth.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, me
And
too.
or original sin. Like, you'd have to believe that to be Christian, I imagine.
Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson only thinks of it as mythology.
Believe in some sort of objective reality, and
Okay.
that God has a place within it.
Okay, we're going to get to that conversation. And I want you to hold on to that thought, because we're not quite done with steeped religion.
I know.
However, it is very important to realize that Jordan Peterson pretty overtly does not believe in the same reality that you and I probably believe in
Oh my God, this has got to be good.
as naturalists, typically, when you're an atheist. So, continuing on. He goes on
I hear materialists a lot. I don't hear naturalists, but
to say, and this is a quote, "The West moves further from religion, and out of this comes desperation and meaningless."
why are they putting these long quotes up and not reading them all?
That's a good question.
They're like putting these long quotes up, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna read together here. No,
Like,
we're
nope.
not. Like, has anyone heard the term cherry picking? I mean, I remember hearing it a lot during the atheist debates.
Right.
I don't know how to make an argument for that not being religious. He
doesn't know how to make an argument for it not being religious. I guess we're supposed to prove.
Well, going back to that cherry picking, is, you know, if they're doing this whole series, I mean, obviously you can do this with the whole chapter, but, you know, the overture part was only like 7 minutes long. I mean, they could just literally do a reading of that and then comment on specifics.
Yeah,
but,
that's
you know, then they couldn't push their agenda of all the secret things that Jordan Peterson really wants you to believe.
That's why I wanted to start with that, because later on in the book, Jordan Peterson makes a pretty forceful argument that you can't have goals without focusing on something. And what you focus on is really makes up a lot of who you are. And it seems perfectly like it makes a lot of sense with what they're doing here, because they're doing that exact same thing. They're focusing on the aspects of the book that they disagree with. Like they're not even really, they haven't summarized the argument that he's made. Like I summarized the argument that he's made just in the few clips that I pulled out at the beginning. Like I don't even know that they know the argument that he's making. Like it's very just like, this religious stuff is really triggering, and let's talk about how terrible it is that he's talking about this religious stuff. Like, am I missing something here? Is that pretty much?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, like since we live in the modern day, we kind of have like a curse of knowledge, and we can't really put ourselves in the mindset of people who wrote these stories, how they actually saw reality. And Peterson is saying they saw reality in terms of moral in their intent rather than descriptive. I think that's what he says.
Totally.
So these aren't literal stories about history. They are stories about, just moral stories about how we should act.
Way to behave.
So, yeah.
Noel Campbell for $2 says, Lucifer, son of the morning, his fall in the Bible. Man, I feel like I'm reading this wrong.
Well, because they said that, Lucifer wasn't in the Bible. It was in this, other
I got
the
you.
book they're talking about.
I got you. Joe Dirt, $5. These guys must really be popular on Fridays and Saturdays. Their voices are like nails on the chalkboard. Fucking leftists. I was thinking about the left thing too. Reid and I both know moral foundations theory, and in moral foundations theory, Jonathan Haidt separates out the left and the right pretty succinctly. And the left is very anti-authority. It's one of the reasons why they're so against hierarchy. And you can see that in a lot of their language, that they, like, the idea of 12 rules really offends that sensibility. Like a lot of religion, a lot of religious people, they aren't offended by authority. They look at authority like as a way to structure their lives. So they like religion for that reason. Like it gives them something that they can structure their life around. So it's not an oppressive type thing, where a lot of people on the left just see it as oppression, which you see that in them. Like the little digs that they make at just anything that just has a tinge of authority to it is pretty pronounced here.
He goes on to use an example of himself having a fever dream of sorts, where he will hang from a chandelier in a...
Yeah, I cut the dream out. We didn't listen to the dream.
Yeah.
I used a clip of Jordan Peterson from Dave Rubin where he goes into the dream and Dave Rubin is just looking at him like, what the fuck, you're on my show talking about a dream? He's like, what's going on here? This is like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I actually like that part of Jordan Peterson because it's so, like, I'm into David Lynch movies. And for me, it's just like, it's like a David Lynch movie. It's like, oh my God, now he's talking about a dream. Like, let the crazy person go.
A cathedral.
Yeah, it seems like
Go ahead.
like in our common culture, when someone says whatever their dream is, it's just we assume that all this is meaningless.
Totally.
And but Peterson is the exact opposite. It's like, oh my gosh, I had this dream, must mean so much. But I don't really care about what people dream. It's obviously, it's whatever.
Oh man, this is just hilarious, but I was actually listening to the audiobook. I put the audiobook in when I was going to sleep, and sometimes I forget to pull the earpiece out while I'm sleeping. Okay.
Oh no.
So I had a Jordan Peterson dream. Like I was hanging out with Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson was telling the story about, like, I don't even remember it in the book because it was in the dream, but he's telling some story about some patient of his that committed suicide or something like that. And I was full on like bawling in my sleep.
Wow.
And I kind of like woke up a little bit, and my wife was like patting my head and like, oh, it's okay. I was like, Jesus, this is crazy. I pulled the earpiece out though. And I went back to sleep.
That's pretty funny.
Don't fall asleep with the book on, okay?
That's why you like Peterson. He brainwashed you.
Oh, I know.
In your sleep.
They're gonna have a
It all makes
heyday with
sense.
that one, aren't they?
Again, I told you, he kind of martyrs himself a lot. He literally does that in this dream sequence where he's in the middle of a church, and based on my knowledge of cathedrals, they are shaped like crosses, and as such, I was at the center of that cross, which is the center of suffering. And
It's like here, let me just flash the words up real quick. You guys don't really, you guys get the meaning of this. You don't, like, first of all, this is the most boring part of the book. I didn't clip it out to use in my intro because, like, the symbology stuff is where he kind of loses me a little bit. So
yeah, it's totally unfalsifiable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's interesting. It's like it feels like Jordan Peterson is like a person who is just on shrooms at all times. So he just sees everything as like the universal symbol of what it represents. That's what makes him so interesting.
I know, exactly. And people just don't get that. The thing is, like, what fascinated me, and the reason why I clipped out the part that I did play, was he understands the problem. Like, I don't know that I buy into his solution to the problem. The problem is, and he even says this in the monk debate, he says we need a low resolution narrative that we can all rally around. That forever has been Christianity. Christianity is going away. Now people want to rally around gender. You can change your gender. They want to rally around the alt-right. They want to rally around ethno-nationalism. People are looking for something to rally around. That's how our human psychology works. And if we don't find something that we can build our culture around, our culture is going to collapse. And that's kind of a big deal. So I don't know that his solution for this, I mean, I feel like his solution is kind of, he's putting forward a materialist, rationalist perspective on Christianity. I think that's a relatively good idea, but I mean, it's not totally clear to me. Do you have thoughts, Reid?
I mean, I'm fine if people want to see Christianity as a myth and see its moral stories as useful for their lives. That's fine. Just I don't want people to pretend things that they don't know. So they know that they don't know. So
truth.
It's difficult.
I
care about truth.
Factual truth is at the top of your hierarchy of values.
It's pretty close, if not the top. Yeah.
Goes on to basically have this Paul-like dream, and then he espouses it to you guys, and you ate it up. I don't understand it. Did you not watch enough of Hugo and Jake?
PewDiePie
Oh, well, I already said I didn't eat it up, so.
Said he read the whole book and didn't realize Jordan Peterson was even religious.
The only thing that makes sense to me in that is we're looking through an American lens where we're very, very religious statistically, and he's from Sweden, and that's not the case. So he might not catch that immediately. Also, he's fucking PewDiePie. He's not exactly an intellectual juggernaut. Not to say that we are, but like the...
You guys watch any PewDiePie?
Occasionally.
PewDiePie.
They do think they're intellectual juggernauts, though.
Yeah, PewDiePie seems very self-aware to me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's a Neo all the way.
Expectation there for PewDiePie to review a book critically is not very high for me.
I suppose. Why is PewDiePie doing book reviews anyway?
I don't know. I think he just liked the book. I have no fucking clue.
That makes a lot of sense.
He goes on to say, and this is the thing I have a little bit of umbrage with, based on his the way he goes at Sam Harris, which I don't totally agree with either, but he uses the word suffering, and he says, we need to find meaning in individual consciousness, and in this manner we can reduce suffering. This will go to your point in a minute. But he doesn't define suffering, which is a thing he has a problem with Sam Harris about. It feels to me very hypocritical of him to even use the phrase reduce suffering as a catch-all for wellness.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Just based on his other debates, specifically the one that Dillahunty is the most recent one I can think of where he mentions this. Because he, for the last 17 fucking weeks, he's been saying oh, I just finished the all of his books, and I just don't think he doesn't go for the heavy hitters. You know what I mean? And he constantly brings up the fact that he doesn't approach the word suffering correctly, or wellness, or well-being.
Sure.
Yeah, irritates me. And The last two quotes that I thought were really striking as far as the religious iconography is concerned is, "We require routine and tradition." Specifically, the tradition part sticks out to me because what's our tradition in North America?
Christianity, generally Protestantism.
Protestant Christianity, yes,
Yeah.
correct. Like, I think other than that, he's not talking about indigenous people. He's...
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. He's left out some people. Here it comes.
Hey, you know, if indigenous people, you know, wanted to be recognized, they shouldn't have all just got murdered by white people.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Why didn't they fight harder?
Why didn't they have better immune systems?
Why didn't they have better culture? Why didn't they have, like, they didn't have Christianity uniting them. They had a bunch of different tribes. They were like easy pickings. Their tribes didn't even get along. Gotta have a, see, what you need is a low resolution, you know, narrative. You can unite people into groups. So when
Are you saying that Native Americans should have been ethno-nationalists like the alt-right?
well, they would have stood a better chance against us if they were. I'm just saying, just putting it out there.
This has become the alt-right stream.
certainly not talking about being under British control and serving a monarchy.
No.
Our tradition here in North America, and again, this is in between verses where he's constantly referencing religious texts.
Yeah.
It's religion, and then finally,
Perhaps we could come to avoid those pathways to hell. And we have seen in the terrible 20th century just how real hell can be. I think he's talking, that's like the Auschwitz comment, right?
And the communism.
Yeah. I hope that these rules and their accompanying essays will help people understand what they already know, that the soul of the individual eternally hungers for the heroism of genuine being. And I would assume he means like meaning. We want meaning in our lives. We hunger for it.
the soul of the individual eternally hungers for the heroism of genuine being, willingness to take that responsibility.
And that the willingness to take that responsibility is identical to the decision to live a meaningful life.
What a horrible thing
I
to
know.
say, right?
I kind of want to live a meaningful life. Do you guys want to live meaningful lives? I mean, just if I had a choice between a meaningless life and a meaningful life, I'd pick the meaningful one.
Oh, yeah.
On is identical to lead a meaningful life. But what does he mean by meaningful life? What does he mean?
Well, didn't you read the chapter? He talks about it in the chapter.
By being.
Oh my God! It's a whole nother part.
Okay, this is a section that I'm probably going to talk the most about out of this whole video, and that's because it honestly befuddles me that anyone can read this book, read what Jordan Peterson has said about objective reality, and not believe that everything he said afterwards is basically moot, because none of his opinions should matter, because it does not appear that this is a person who believes in objective reality. I'm going to build a case here based on the quotes in this introduction that Jordan Peterson believes that truth equals societal consensus, and that's as close to objective reality as you should ever hope to strive for. He begins the book by saying...
Do you guys understand what they're trying to prove?
Well, since I already heard, they make this mistake where... Because what he said is that, Peterson believes that truth is what society agrees with or accepts, which isn't what, Peterson argued with Sam Harris. It's that truth is what helps society. And they completely, leave that part out.
Yeah, you're talking about the metaphorical truth. What?
Right.
Yeah. Believing it even if
Peter,
it's on. Go ahead.
Peterson takes a lot of his philosophy from this, from pragmatism, William James, I think. And it's a lot about, utility.
Yes. And utility is above factual truth.
So does that mean that Peterson doesn't believe in objective reality?
No, he very much does. There's plenty of videos online of him arguing with Brett Weinstein about it. They're amazing. You should watch them. There's a 2-hour podcast of him arguing with Sam Harris about it, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I love when Sam Harris says, like, you can't. He says, no, you can't. Like, truth is truth, and he's like, why not? We get things wrong all the time. Like, the theory of ether. Yeah, that's a good idea. Then we find out, it didn't work now, so we change it. That's what he's like. Yeah, we believe things all the time that turn out to be untrue.
Contributing to a site called Quora. Of course, we talked about this earlier. Quora, anyone can ask a question of any sort, and anyone.
What is their motivation here, though? Is just to prove that, because they want to knock Peterson into this, like, they have this idea that Christians are all fundamentalists, and they believe the world is 6,000 years old, even though not all Christians believe that, obviously, but like they
not all.
Yeah, they want to make a case here that Peterson can't be trusted because he doesn't even understand how reality works. Like, if you look at the Maps and Meaning series, I mean, I got to admit, it's a very strange way to look at the world, but he says we don't actually perceive objects, but we perceive tools and obstacles. Like, he says everything that we perceive is either a tool or an obstacle to achieve our goals, which is an interesting way to look at the world. But as soon as I thought of that, I'm like, it does kind of seem like the whole world just kind of disappears. Like, when I look at things, I do think of them as either a tool or an obstacle. So,
yes, but if we all disappeared, the Earth is not going anywhere.
What do you mean?
I mean, reality is not dependent upon minds. We evolved, and in reality.
No, totally.
So reality is a thing.
I totally agree. Yeah, but it's our perception of that reality, though.
If Jordan Peterson gives a talk in the middle of a forest and there's no one around to hear, can it still be misinterpreted by an SJW?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the best case scenario for them, because they just make up everything that he said.
One can answer. Readers upvote the answers they like and downvote those they don't. In this manner, the most useful answers rise to the top while the others sink into oblivion. Pretty innocuous.
So also, they seem super offended by the fact that certain things are determined by popularity. But I mean, that's how democracy works. Like, that's how we come up with laws and whatnot. They're all determined by popular. Right?
Right, but they're trying to equate this to... See, Jordan Peterson believes that, majority rule equals reality or something.
Oh.
And not what is not what we do, but like what is the inherentness of reality, which I don't think Peterson believes that.
How Quora works, but that compounded along earlier with what we were saying about how much he likes to talk about how popular his answers are.
Correct.
It builds upon this case that Jordan Peterson seems to think that truth equals a group consensus. And I know on its own that's not a lot.
Well, that leads to some problems, especially if, of course, you are an atheist watching this. You would probably not agree that consensus equals truth in things that regard, say, I don't know, Jesus being divine. Because in that case, Jesus would in fact be divine.
Sure.
Because the consensus in America, and I know that that's slowly dropping, we would be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're wrong.
Sure.
But that goes directly in opposition to how Jordan Peterson feels reality exists.
Sure. He's talking about...
You guys know that there's big differences between moral truths and scientific truths, right? I mean, moral truths are based on the social environment.
Well, they don't know that.
This is our big disagreement.
Ooh.
Ours? Oh, you think there are moral truths. You think there are factual moral truths.
Yeah, we have more. There is such a thing as moral knowledge.
In mythology, he goes on to say, I proposed in Maps of Meaning that the great myths and religious stories of the past, particularly those derived from an earlier oral tradition, were moral in their intent rather than descriptive. Thus, they did not concern themselves with what the world was, as scientists might have it, but with how much a human being should act. I suggested that our ancestors portrayed the world as a stage, a drama instead of a place of objects. I described how I had come to believe that the constituent elements of the world as a drama were order and chaos and not material things. Again, this compounds earlier with the order and chaos being masculine and feminine, respectively.
It's pretty nicely
Okay, so-
tucked in next to.
Do either of you, from that what they read, do either of you extrapolate that to mean that Jordan Peterson doesn't believe in objective reality?
No, not at all. He's talking about the metaphysical substrate. He's talking about the metaphysical world. He's talking about that low resolution narrative that unites us all into a group.
Yeah, because I could not really understand how they were getting all of what they were saying from that line that they read.
Reid?
I think Peterson does have a very unorthodox view of reality and perception. And I think if you listen to that first Sam Harris podcast, their disagreement was pretty apparent.
Have you given that podcast a second listen?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, second time through, man. Peterson makes a lot of sense.
To vocab words that maybe a quick read through wouldn't make that clear, I guess. But once you sit with that paragraph, just read it over twice, really. Like, actually read it and synthesize it in your head. He's very clearly saying that materialism, the naturalism, things existing, isn't how
Peterson's idea of truth is very probabilistic truth. I mean, when you're talking about evolutionary survival, you're talking about probabilities. Like in that podcast, many times Peterson says, it's true enough. It's true enough. Like it's got to be true enough to move forward. And I think Sam Harris's big problem with that is because Sam Harris kept saying that, there is an underlying truth, whether or not we know it. But Peterson, go ahead.
My problem with their whole debate was, I don't know, I just felt like Peterson should just use a different word to define what he's talking about. Right, but he instead of redefining the word truth into meaning something, something non-objective.
Mushrooms, give him a break.
Okay.
Like, what do you expect?
So is that the true the key to the people that understand Peterson? It's either if you've been on shrooms, you understand them, and if you haven't, then you don't.
Maybe so. I've done shrooms, so I speak Peterson. But you speak Peterson too, so I don't know if you've ever done mushrooms, but that avatar looks
but
like
I don't know about Reid.
Reid? No. Psilocybin?
He's a good boy.
Mm-mm.
World. He views the world as a set of experiences only. This is
problematic. I view the world as a series of never-ending genders. That's the correct way to that's the correct way to perceive the world.
So close to I think therefore I am, very, very early, how we deal with reality.
Sure.
Stuff this is baseline where we start that thinking process. You know what I mean? Socrates was thinking about this kind of shit.
Even terrible philosophies like Ayn Rand objectivism, at the very least, do sort of try and address the difference between perceived reality and reality.
Why does it totally make sense that he drinks Dr. Pepper? I couldn't resist.
He's a drink Diet Dr. Pepper.
I think it is Diet Dr. Pepper, actually.
It's better for you.
But it's still
supposedly.
Objectivism? I know he's going to get shit for that. I know Ruckus still hates me over the objectivist stuff.
Oh, really?
You can't talk smack about the objectivists. These guys are making all these rookie moves.
Objectivism has what? Go ahead.
You know what I call objectivism?
What?
Don't do it. Don't do
Daddy
it.
Issues, the philosophy.
Oh man.
Oh, you're gonna get your channel is gonna be littered with hate comments after this.
I'll take it.
And obviously, objectivism doesn't own the concept of objective reality.
Yes,
but it's in the title. What are you talking about?
No, that's not how that works.
addresses it in its disregarding of that in its view that you can derive objective reality from reason and inductive reasoning.
Yeah, I think maybe a little more structure to those. We should probably explain exactly what Ayn Rand and kind of like where Jordan Peterson lies between that Ayn Rand source.
Whenever I see someone roll their eyes, I just think thumbnail. Like that's just like it's like it's like bait to me.
Version of reality and where most of us usually exist.
Okay, philosophically, Ayn Rand objectivism, if I can try and truncate this in the best way I possibly can. Essentially, the idea is that there is an objective reality, objectivism, and you can derive the truth of objective reality using your senses and reason.
Why are they even talking about this?
I know. Reid is sighing. I'm sighing. Sorry, guys.
This has nothing to do with anything. I don't know why they're talking about this.
To get there. Now that on its face...
Now, I see you do a lot of editing on your videos, Sitch. You know how editing works, right? Fucking A.
You press the little... I press the little S key on my keyboard, and it makes a little cut.
Exactly. They edited in all those texts that they didn't even read. Now they're going to get this dissertation on Darwinian realism, which I love that name. For $10 says, this is their one semi-valid point, that Peterson's truth is societal/religious consensus and denies the possibility of getting an ought from an is, from naturalism or objective reality, humanism. Translation, guys?
Well, I mean, again, I think it goes back to what I said in the beginning of their whole section, was that, I mean, Peterson's not saying that the consensus is what's true. He's saying what helps us progress is what's true, which I don't necessarily agree with,
But he would argue that the consensus is what emerges. Like he would like I've talked about it before in terms of religion being like there's a product cycle going on with religion, and religion builds traditions that work over iterated games. He would call it iterated games.
Mm-hmm.
So using those traditions, people don't necessarily know why they work. They work.
Right, but we just shouldn't call it truth. How about that?
Well, he's arguing that the scientists are the ones that change the meaning of truth, because it says like truth all over the.
I don't agree with that.
I'm fine with the wisdom
Yes.
truth distinction. It makes it perfectly clear. I'm even fine with the metaphorical truth distinction. So
I think it comes down to the difference between what is adaptive and what is the actual case.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Value seems like, of course, you
But
can
what do you do in a situation though where you know something is adaptive, but you don't know why? So you don't know the actual truth.
You
It's
go to Jordan
just
Peterson, and he tells you why.
What's that?
It's
You ask Peter.
yeah.
go
It's go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I want to hear your joke.
Yeah, go ahead with the joke.
The moment is lost. It's too late.
It's lost. I think in that situation, it's just your current version of the map for the territory. So it works. It's like true enough, as Peterson says, but there is a territory that we're trying to map.
Right. So we can get closer to it, closer to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Back to objectivism, guys.
It seems like something we would actually agree with. You can use your reason to understand objective reality.
But what happens when you and I disagree?
Right. And it also has to do with the difference between some sort of inductive reasoning or reasoning with data sets, for instance.
Correct.
This is why
Inductive reasoning does use data sets, last I checked. Correct?
Republican might say, who republicanism and modern conservatism, a lot of it philosophically closely resembles Ayn Rand objectivism.
Correct.
In the sense that they might say, it's snowing outside today, global warming isn't true. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's not using data and trying to get some sort of...
That's anecdotal evidence.
So
Even
are
system like
they're
science.
implying that Jordan Peterson, the guy who constantly is referencing data. Like 99% of the time he talks, you know, it doesn't do this and is some sort of climate denier or something.
Yeah. The psychological literature on that is perfectly clear. The scientific literature on this is crystal clear. Like, dude, oh man. If you just pulled all those in clips out of all the videos, you could probably make a video that's like an hour and a half long of just Jordan Peterson saying the psychological literature or the scientific literature. It's like one of his go-to moves. It's one of the things that I like about him.
Exactly.
Like
you should get Rucka to make a song, a remix of him just saying those lines.
I literally have a second channel now where I'm taking Jordan Peterson clips, and when Jordan Peterson says the psychological literature, I'm like pulling out the psychological literature and putting it in the video with the clip. Like, he's talking about real science here. I think it's actually pretty amazing.
Science seems on its surface like a way to look at objective reality. Really, science doesn't concern itself necessarily with what is objective reality. It concerns itself with providing as much data to ourselves as possible so we can make predictions about the future that are as accurate as possible, and it's open to change over time. Objectivism isn't that. It is, I can know objective reality using my reason, period.
Yeah, and I think Jordan Peterson would disagree with that because he disagrees with how consciousness even is.
Yeah.
So he disagrees with how we perceive the world. He doesn't think that consciousness is tied to the brain.
Do you guys ever are you watching this and feeling a little like you're watching like a kitten play with a ball of string or something? I mean, I really feel like these guys are just kind of playing with these ideas for the first time.
Not like us intellectuals. We're very learned and smart.
You've read Dostoevsky.
He thinks, and the way he thinks it's tied to the brain is very, very tangentially, those are his words, not mine. So, implying that if you were to remove the brain and smash it like fucking Gallagher with a watermelon mallet, I would exist exterior from that. Like I would be
what?
I would be somewhere with a cat.
I know he's going crazy here.
Well, so he's saying that Peterson believes in a soul, I guess.
A disembodied soul? Do you think Peterson believes in a disembodied soul?
Well, he did say, I just heard it. I think it was with the Matt Delhunte thing, where he said, does consciousness come from the brain? So maybe that's what he's referencing.
Oh man, Peterson is so unclear on any of that stuff. It's really it's hard to pin him down.
It is. I didn't like that debate or I didn't finish it. I didn't like it because Peterson doesn't want to answer the question about God.
Totally.
And I don't know why.
Well, he can answer. What are you talking about? Well, how can he answer it?
I don't know. He can answer it truthfully. What do you mean?
Well, how he really feels?
Yeah, I know it's a crazy idea.
He's like in politician land now.
Right.
Capital B, I would be elsewhere.
That again plays into the idea that he's a theist, though, which I think
agree.
Is very
That's
much
where I was headed.
Because dualism is not inherently religious, but if you're religious and believe in the idea of a soul, you are a dualist. That's what that is.
At best, he's a deist.
Yeah.
At best. And now I'm not. Someone's gonna say the founding fathers were deists. Yeah, they had slaves and syphilis. Like, they're not great. Some of them were really good at lawmaking. Like, I think we can stop sucking dick a little bit, huh?
I talked to you about this the other day. I'm pretty sure Ben Franklin...
I never started sucking dick, just for the record here.
Figured out bifocals when he was fucking a butterface. He was like, I don't want to see up here very clearly, but the rest,
Whoever
bifocals.
Fergie was back in the day.
Yeah. Let's talk about Jordan Peterson and the definition of capital B being, because this is something that is going to come into this is something we're going to talk about a lot in this book, probably, and this directly ties into his view of what constitutes reality.
Yes.
Because we are vulnerable and mortal, pain and anxiety are integral part of the human existence. We must have something to set against the suffering that is intrinsic to being. And then there's an asterisk, and then there is a whole section that literally just...
You've heard Peterson say this before, that the only truth is pain. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Defines being, and I'm going to read the whole thing. I use the term being with a capital B in part because of my exposure to the idea of the 20th century German philosopher Martin Heidegger. Heidegger tried to distinguish between reality, as conceived objectively, and the totality of human experience, which is, quote, being. Being with a capital B is what each of us experiences subjectively, personally, and individually, as well as what we each experience jointly with others. As such, it includes emotions, drives, dreams, visions, and revelations, as well as our private thoughts and experiences. Being is also, finally, something that is brought into existence by action, so its nature is to an indeterminate degree a consequence of our decisions and choices, something shaped by our hypothetically free will. Construed in this manner, being is 1. Not something easily and directly reducible to material and objective, and 2. Something that most definitely requires its own term, as Heidegger labeled for decades to indicate. So this definition of being that he's working with essentially boils down to some sort of mixture of your own subjective experiences, and when he goes into mythology and the ideas of these sort of general societal consensuses, almost a Hume-esque, like, collective unconscious, where what makes up being and reality is constituted of your subjective experience and society's views of reality, not reality itself. Does that make sense? Reality is what you experience and what society communally agrees upon as truth.
Jesus is real.
Yeah. So, at this point, we have established...
Peterson was saying that's what being meant. I mean, does he make that comparison of being doesn't equal reality? Like they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, the SJW stuff comes to mind a little bit with the whole your personal experience. Like your lived experience is how they would catalog it. So I don't see any smoking gun here. They're acting like there's some kind of smoking gun. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Well, couldn't you just replace the word being with consciousness and it would, that's the same thing?
Yeah.
From his description?
Yeah. Yes. And I just laugh because I don't know how he got the Jesus is real thing when Peterson is like not taking a position on, like Peterson has gone to great lengths to not answer the is Jesus real question. Man Faces World for $2 says, TFW, you wonder how two Fedora lords got 162K subs. I don't, because I think, that's how you get 162 subs. You preach to the choir. These guys are preaching to the choir. People have the same kind of intuitions as them. Like they don't like this Peterson guy. Like there are people out there that don't like Peterson and they want, like these guys are catering to that need. It's a niche market. It's a shrinking market, but they're going to corner that market.
Are they Atheist Plus guys? Have they been around for like a while?
They're talking atheism. I don't know that they're Atheism Plus guys, so I don't know that they go that far back. I've never had, I've heard of the Bible Reloaded, and I may have even listened to one episode like 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to listen to atheist content and enjoy it. The Thunderfoot Venom Fang X feud was just awesome. Like, I don't know if you were watching that, but it was pretty.
I remember. That was like the only thing I knew about was that, that one feud, like way back in the day.
Yeah, I was into the high stakes drama of it. Like this kid's writing checks his ass can't get.
It says on their channel they've been around since 2012.
Oh, you looked it up?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. How are their numbers? What do they look like?
Well, I just saw a video. It says Chris Reagan has hella cancer. I don't know what the video's about.
That he doesn't necessarily believe in objective reality. He believes in some sort of group-based consensus. Now, why does he consider something like that?
They're only doing this because they see Jordan Peterson as a Christian, and they feel obligated to debunk the Christian. We're all in agreement on that, correct?
Yeah, and I guess it's so hard for me to see him as even being that Christian.
Yeah, I don't see it either. Like I see him as an evolutionary psychologist.
Like this so important. He goes on to say, for better or worse, trying to address a perplexing problem, the reason or reasons for the nuclear standoff in Cold War I. He calls it Cold War I, by the way. I couldn't understand how belief systems could be so important to people that were willing to risk the destruction of the world to protect them. I came to realize that shared belief systems made people intelligible to one another, and that the systems weren't just about belief. People who live by the same code are rendered mutually predictable to one another. They act in keeping with each other's expectations and desires. They can cooperate. They can even compete peacefully, because everyone knows what to expect from everyone else. A shared belief system, partially psychological, partly acted out, simplifies everyone in their own eyes and in the eyes of others. Shared beliefs simplify the world as well, because people know what to expect from one another, can act together to tame the world. There is perhaps nothing more important than the maintenance of this organization, and this, if it's threatened, the great ship of state rocks.
Okay, so what this is, very subtly, to someone who read it real quick once, but not so subtly if you read it more than once, is, you ever hear that argument that, state atheism in the Soviet Union led to death?
Oh, he talks about that specifically.
I know he does.
He says, he
does it over here, though. You see how he had to flip pages?
I read more than my share of dark books about the 20th century, focusing
Correct.
particularly on Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union.
Right, but then you had to go, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages later,
Yeah.
he begins to finish that thought, and he says, oh, we all have to rally around one idea so that we're homogenous as a society,
Right.
because, and I agree with him in part, a homogenous society tends to be more capable of cooperation.
Sure.
I think that's obvious and reasonable.
Sure.
But the problem here is the thing that he wants us to rally around isn't the 12 Rules book. It's this cultural Christianity and his view of reality. Does that make sense?
They're getting relatively close here.
Yeah.
Nice, guys. I'm giving you 10 points for this.
Well, you think that, I don't know, do you think Jordan Peterson's goal with the book is to really get people to believe, his version of truth and reality? Or is it just to help people, better themselves?
I do think that there's like a level of traditionalism that he thinks is good for society. Like I would word it in Christianity has a certain number of ethics or memes that are pro-social, pro-societal memes, and Christianity has been the delivery system for those memes up until Christianity is starting to break down. And we still need to be able to get those memes into the culture one way or another. I mean, the way that I would break it down, though, I mean, they're just completely offended by the idea of Christianity. But like there are certain ideas in Christianity that I think scientific evidence shows are memes that you want to propagate in society. Like there's a reason why Christianity has persisted all this time. It's because it's been putting those pro-social memes into the culture.
Right, but there's kind of this, I don't know if the irony is the right word, but there's kind of this problem in that, you're going to have the people that are attracted to the ordered system of Christianity are going to be, are more likely to be dogmatic, and they're going to believe all the crap parts of Christianity and all that stuff too. Where the liberal side of things, who could just take away the positive aspects of Christianity, are going to be more likely to just throw the whole thing away.
Yeah, totally. And he talks, Jordan Peterson actually talks about that in the book. He talks about the danger of becoming dogmatic. Like that's why he brings up the yin and the yang. He's like, you have to walk the line between order and chaos. You have to walk the line between, order taken too far becomes totalitarianism, and chaos taken too far becomes anarchy.
Right.
Like you are looking for a balance. So, but I mean, the interesting thing in a lot of the conversations that Reid and I have had is like, if you're building, like the way evolution works is it works with what's available. Like, I don't know, like they did this thing called, the Great Leap Forward and the cultural, like, haven't they tried to completely restructure a society with a top-down culture? Like, I don't think it works.
Right.
I
Yeah,
agree. It
things
has
take
to
time.
be. It has to be evolutionary. It has to be one step at a time. Protopia,
Yeah,
not utopia.
One of the
Right.
reasons why I like Peterson is I feel like I have always been a student of height. And I think Peterson identifies the same problem that height identifies. He does it. That's the clip that I played in the very beginning. It's what they just read. Like we need a narrative that we can rally around. And I mean, Peterson would go as far as saying our brains have evolved for this narrative, that this narrative is much more than just culture. It is part of us in bodily, like it's bodily part of us. Now,
As height would say, 90% chimp, 10% bee.
yeah, exactly. There's plenty of scientific evidence to that goes in that direction. Go ahead, Reid.
Yeah, and I actually have to go, guys. Good chatting with you, and
Okay.
I'll chat with you later.
Take
See you
care.
later.
See ya.
So, I mean, am I wrong to give them credit where credit is due, Sitch?
Well, I don't know, because I don't see. I mean, I haven't read the book, so I don't know. But I don't see from all the things I've heard Peterson say. It sounds like his main priority is the clinical psychologist priority. It's, I want to help people get their lives in order, get sorted out, and just be better and more productive and happy in society. His goal is not to impart his worldview of, what philosophical truth and symbols and all that other stuff. That's not his goal. Is not to make people believe all that stuff.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, because the book is, it's a self-help book. It's not it's not maps of meaning or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I may be putting a little of my own thoughts on there, but from what I've read, he's using Christianity to promote ideas of what are healthy ways to behave. But he's not
Right.
really saying be a Christian and you'll your life is going to be better if you become a Christian. There's none of that in the book. Sad FSD. God, you guys are killing me here. $5. More like liminal Scientologists. Jackoff D. Skeeterson /S. What's that mean? I don't know my memes.
There's a lot of references there I'm not up with, because we're old men.
Sorry, guys. We're old
But,
timers here.
Did you see, it actually ties into what Reid was saying before he left about, building up society slowly. Did you see that Hank Green was kind of complaining about Jordan Peterson on Twitter yesterday?
No, tell me.
He said, the first tweet was, legitimate question for Jordan Peterson fans. Once you've made your bed, stood up straight, gone the extra mile, and make it to the top of your dominance hierarchy, in quotes, is there advice for what to do then? And then he followed that up with, I just haven't seen any of Peterson's work recognize that it is the responsibility of those with power to correct injustice and work against inequality. Is there at least some lip service paid to that, or is the idea that gaining power just leads to overall good? So it's like, to me, it feels like Hank completely doesn't understand Peterson's position, and it's kind of what Reid was saying about, Peterson believes that if you are a better person and you act better, you'll intrinsically help society become better.
Yeah, he said that. He said that very forcefully.
He just said that not that long ago.
He's in the book. I mean, I was reading part of the book. I went back and reread the overture because I knew we were going to do this. But I believe in the overture, talks about that your goals should function so that they are good for you personally, good for your family, good for your immediate circle, ultimately good for society, and good for society 1,000 years in the future. Which is like, okay, that's some pretty good goals there. Like, if you're thinking that far ahead, you got something going on. So,
Right.
but the inequality thing is just it's a thing that really bugs the left. Like, the left's goal is to make things equal.
Right.
Yeah.
Bugs me. I'm a big lefty.
Yeah, me too. I mean, but I don't see Peterson having any problems with that.
No, I mean, he talks about it, you know, there's like 10 clips of him talking about the fucking Pareto distribution and how dangerous it is.
Yeah, exactly. But there's not a good way to fix it.
That we know of.
Hank would just say there is a way to fix it though, right? Like 90% tax on the top.
Right, you know, just wealth redistribution or something.
Yeah. Take the top off the competence hierarchy.
Honestly, it's like he looked at. Okay, it's like he looked at postmodernism.
They're wanting to make the argument that Peterson is a secret Christian, though. That's what they're trying to. That's the argument that they're making.
Definitely.
And I'm not.
And he did look at postmodernism quite a bit.
He looked at postmodernism.
Explain postmodernism, real quick.
Okay, first I got to explain modernism. Modernism is the idea of a prolific philosophical mindset in a variety of different art forms and industries and the world as a whole, that essentially we could together. This is very much Reagan's shining city on a hill idea.
You know, did you see?
The idea that we could all come together.
Let's go off on something a little bit more interesting. Did you see? Did you see Armor Skeptic's video on postmodernism and then Dr. Lehman's response to that?
I did, yeah.
Because I felt like, you know, I felt like everyone understood Armor Skeptic's video and what he was talking about. You know, he's talking about, you know, the cultural postmodernism, and, you know, what we're talking about nowadays. And then Dr. Lehman spends like the first 10 minutes of his video saying, well, Armor Skeptic is wrong because postmodernism refers to like art and architecture and all this other stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck is happening?
There's so many different ways to look at a lot of the terms in postmodernism. Like postmodern art and postmodern philosophy, I think, are very different. So, I mean, I learned about postmodernism in art. Like, I studied art in college. So,
Right.
And I mean, postmodernism in art is just appropriating from different periods and whatnot. So, I mean, it's very innocuous.
Right, and obviously that's not what Jordan Peterson's talking about.
There's a clip, and it's in the latest interview that he did, and he talks about how these people are coming at him and saying Jordan Peterson doesn't understand postmodernism and Marxists are not fundamentally compatible. And
Right, that wasn't that Contra's point in the video.
Yeah, my feeling is just like, who cares though? Like, what the hell are we talking about here?
Well, it was funny because Peterson responded to that saying, yeah, I know it doesn't make sense, but that's what they do.
I know, exactly. Exactly. It's like, just because it's not coherent doesn't mean that they don't do it, which is completely true. I mean, people have incoherent belief systems all the time. It's not required.
Right.
Together with an idea of a mutual goal and collectively create almost some sort of utopia. There was some sort of ideal future that we could strive towards and all work towards that would improve everything for everyone.
Was that like their low resolution narrative? Sounds like progressivism.
Do you remember the Disney self-sustaining city in a dome?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Very modernism. When you see 1950s videos where it shows like housewives in the future, like using...
like robot, like think Fallout's like without the bombs.
Sure. Postmodernism was the ideology that was birthed as a reaction to that, which we're sort of still, I would argue we're probably in the post-end of what would be considered postmodernist ideology, because it's sort of coming to the end of its usefulness. We need to come up with something better at this point. It's the idea that we are recognizing as a society what is a shining city on a hill for me might be a dystopia for you.
Right.
So as a society, we cannot come together and necessarily come to this consensus of what the perfect ideal is, because that ideal is different for everyone. And in a society, we need to make compromises and work together to try and come up with what is ideal for the most people and try and not trample on others. It's the revelation that subjective experience and different...
It's weird because, whenever you hear Jordan Peterson complain about postmodernism, he's not talking about what they're talking about. He complains maybe, hypocritically about the idea that there's, no one can be right or true about anything because everyone's own subjective opinion is valid.
Yes.
Which is what they were criticizing, a couple minutes ago.
Totally. I was thinking the same thing.
People come from different viewpoints, and that's okay, and we need to figure out what to do with it.
Now, the problem there that you're seeing, politically speaking, is those that are still latching on to modernism, but they don't know. They don't think they know it. But
well, you think the people just the blue collar people are really latching on to modernism? They're like, honey, I'm home. What's going on with the modernists?
Stark libertarians.
Yeah.
Really hardcore socialists or communists. Really hardcore authoritarians on either side of the fence.
Sure.
That's where you get this sort of... I think that's the most obvious usage of modernism today, specifically libertarians, because they're all so like, the shining city on a hill can be the whole country if all of us have our own shining cities, because we're libertarian, and if we just let the free market of society rule, we all get that. But
that ties back into Ayn Rand objectivism, too,
I know it does.
Because did I talk about the morality of Ayn Rand objectivism?
No.
Okay, Ayn Rand objectivism, morally speaking, the moral philosophy there is...
How do we... I completely, zoned out. I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, how we got here.
And me neither. I thought they needed to end this video here. I was like, what's going on? I thought, oh, they're wrapping up, and then I thought, wow, they got another half hour here. I don't exactly understand why. Yeah, we're kind of drifting off. They're talking about all these different narratives that people can rally around, and this is kind of what Jordan Peterson would be saying. It's okay, one of the reasons why he frowns on intersectionality is because you're just dividing people up into these smaller and smaller groups, and society at some level needs to cohere.
Right.
You can't have this is how politics works. This is why in America we have a two-party system, because if none of the party none of the parties don't want to give up any market share. As soon as one party breaks in half, then the whatever party doesn't break in half is going to dominate. It's going to be a one-party system. So when people talk about there needs to be more political parties, I keep thinking, okay, so more political parties equals a one-party system, because that's just the inevitable outcome of more political parties.
Yeah, unless we started with, unless we could reset and started with more parties. Which
sure, and separate them up into equal share.
Right.
Competitive. But now we're so close to 50-50. It would never necessarily.
And usually when people talk about more parties, it's just, they want more, extreme versions of the parties that exist. It's not like they have, very different views.
Totally. We need an ethno-national party. Sure you do.
To an individual's well-being,
an undefined well-being.
Sure.
One of the reasons why I think Jordan Peterson is so popular also is Jordan Peterson never says He never does any kind of verbal tics. I almost think it'd be interesting to do a study if you went and looked at people, because there's quite a few public intellectuals like Haidt, Jordan Peterson, Steven Pinker. There's all these various different public intellectuals, and I think that you could categorize them into how much power they have in terms of followership or whatever, just by the amount of times that they say Steven Pinker.
Well, that's a little oversimplification, but I'm sure that has something to do with it.
I wonder. I mean, people pick up on that as for those cues. Jordan Peterson has an air of confidence about him that I think really sells his points. Because I do agree to the point where a lot of his stuff is not as clear. And I have argued, like some people have come at me and said, like they put the clarity issue on Jordan Peterson. They said, Jordan Peterson, it's his fault that I can't understand what he's saying. Like he's the one that needs to make things clear. Do you know that there's a difference between Eastern and Western philosophy, that they put the impetus on understanding on the listener and not the speaker? In the West, we put the responsibility on the speaker. In the East, they put the responsibility on the listener, which is a very different, just fundamental aspect of society. Like a Easterner would never say, it's his responsibility for me to understand. They would think, I'm missing something here. What am I missing? Which is kind of the way you and I have approached Jordan Peterson.
Right.
Like I got to admit, I'm fascinated by a lot of his stuff, but I sense that he has more experience. Like he's read more. And so many times when he does this, the psychological literature on that is very clear, I think. Yeah, the psychological literature is very clear on that. And I've read that psychological literature. So where it's very easy for Hugo and Jake to say everything he's saying is just a deceitful lie. Me, I've read so much of so much of what he says intersects with other stuff that I've read before I ever even heard of the guy, that it's impossible for me to say, okay, this guy is just talking nonsense.
Well, I wonder if he had become, if Peterson had become popular, not through the trans stuff, but just, I don't know, general postmodernism hatred, if people would view him negatively, to begin with, because I think that's what leads to so much confusion for the left.
How do you feel about the reason why I have such a problem with the trans stuff is because of the psychological literature. Just, I read this book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, where it's basically a book of how to get people to, it's compliance tactics. It's how to sell your point of view. And what Peterson is putting together in the future authoring program, there's something that happens when you write something down that it really becomes part of your identity. And it's easier for people to follow through with goals. Peterson has said it dozens of times. Like there's a 30%, people who take the future authoring program have a 30% better chance of achieving their goals. So sure, there are some people that flake out, but, and there's, in that book, the Cialdini book, he talks about how, like you've seen all of these, like marketers will put together some sort of contest where you have to write about certain products, right?
Right.
And in order to win the contest, you've got to write glowingly about the product. Well, that when you do write about something,
it's called paid sponsorships on YouTube.
Oh, that too. They also used it during the Korean War to turn American soldiers against the United States, to turn American soldiers pro-communist.
Right. I read about that.
So, I mean, I think that kids today are really experimenting with their identity, and so much of that experimenting with their identity, when I grew up, experimenting with our identity was talking smack to your friends, right? It wasn't writing down, you could take it back. But so many of the kids today, it's all written down. And I think it puts people who are experimenting with their identity in this like trans trender direction kind of in a bind, because it's almost like they could, am I wrong? I don't know.
I've never thought of it that way. It's kind of interesting. I do think there's going to be, I do think that a lot of the non-binary stuff, and especially I do think there is an over diagnosis of people that have gender dysphoria.
Sure.
And I think that a lot of the sex change operations and a lot of and more than that, I think even worse than that is the hormone blockers, because they just give kids hormone blockers. They just act like there's no, it doesn't do anything. which is fucking absurd. And I think that's going to be the medical thing that 50 or 60 years from now, people are going to look back and say, what the hell are we thinking? Just giving kids, hormone blockers.
It's going to be like thalidomide babies.
Exactly.
You know about thalidomide?
Yeah.
Just for the chat, thalidomide was, so women have always had morning sickness when they got pregnant, and they decided that they were going to take care of that. So they developed this drug, thalidomide, that got rid of morning sickness, but it ended up there was a generation of deformed kids born from it. So, and it's interesting, the morning sickness actually serves an evolutionary purpose. I won't go into it here, but it's totally fascinating. So it's hard to tell if the deformities were from the actual thalidomide, or the morning sickness is supposed to prevent women from eating certain things that are dangerous to the fetus. Like, that's why they get sick and throw up, is because there's certain things in certain foods that are dangerous to the fetus during certain stages of development. So they don't know if it's the things that they ate because the thalidomide quelled the symptoms, or if it was the thalidomide itself, which is fascinating as well. But oh God, do we have to watch the rest of this video? Jesus.
You don't have to.
No, I'll get you. If you have to go, you have to go. But I'll.
No, I don't think
No, of course.
Is positive morally in that which is detrimental to one's own.
I'm going to give.
Morally negative.
I'm going to give Sitch half the super chats too. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the thing.
No, you don't have to do that. It's fine.
Well, I already said it though. Now it's out there. Like, this is like writing it down. It's become part of my identity.
Oh, is that how it works?
This is an inherently, and it's talking specifically about oneself, not any individual.
Right.
It's specifically an ideology. Read Atlas Shrugged if you want to see examples of this.
It's why libertarians love that shit,
Sure.
by the way.
It's about, I'm going to do the best for me as I can and not worry about other people. It's basically saying selfishness is morality, because if everyone behaves in a selfish way, everyone will be taken care of. That's a ridiculous statement. It doesn't make any sense.
It implies everyone has not only the same standards to which everyone should receive benefits, or not benefits, but like the fruits of the earth. Let's just say that. Let's say there's an apple tree. It implies everyone agrees that they all get one apple a day, and no one says they want 2 apples a day.
Sure.
Right? And it also implies that all we need is an apple a day. Yep. Or whatever.
And this ties into Jordan Peterson's thing, too, because one of the things he talks about later is all about what you should do is you should treat yourself as if you were a person you were responsible for taking care of, because you are. He's taking the golden rule, basically, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Who said that?
Who said the golden rule?
The golden rule?
Yeah, who said that?
Is it in the...
Do unto others?
I don't know.
As you...
I don't know who said that. That was... I don't know. It's just an axiom.
It's Jesus, right? I mean...
Yeah, it was. Well, he took it from the Torah.
Oh,
he's a big fat Jew.
He stole it from... Oh, yeah, Jesus is a Jew. I forgot.
Yeah, we forget about that.
It all started with Jesus, didn't it? Jesus is a Christian, guys. Don't let him convince you Jesus is a Jew.
It's so funny because, being raised Jewish, obviously I never read the New Testament until, I don't know, when I was much older. And I remember reading it, and I got to the part, I think it's in Mark, it's the first gospel, where Jesus says, you have to, all Jews have to follow, he says all people have to follow all the old rules. So he's talking about all the old rules in the Torah, okay, until the end times come. So in the Bible, it says all Christians are supposed to be following all the old rules in the Torah, and yet none of them do. None of them keep kosher. None of them do any of that stuff.
Holy cow. Are you serious?
Yes, it's so
I'm an
absurd.
atheist, so none of those.
It doesn't matter to you. It's just...
So many people, when people find out that I'm a Jordan Peterson fan, they assume that I'm a Christian. And it's
so weird.
It is weird. Because they're like, oh, you dumb theist and this and that. And I'm like, dude, fuck you. Like my rules don't...
I wonder if, because, Peterson is interesting, because maybe it kind of proves Peterson right, because he talks about how there's kind of this inherent religiousness into the human mind when it comes to symbols and stuff. And maybe because Peterson talks so much about symbols, like it kind of triggers that emotion in people. That's kind of like that sets off the same receptors as religion would set off. So they just become like uncomfortable or something.
They get really uncomfortable when you say what they're doing is religious as well. But they have their own dogma, their own belief system. But they don't want to think of it that way.
Of course.
Their dogma is science.
Axiom. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, he is essentially taking the golden rule and reversing it. Instead of saying, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, he's saying, do unto yourself as you would do unto others. Which is a weird view for someone who is so into Christian mythology, to the point where he believes that if you believe it hard enough, it constitutes effective reality, at the very least.
He actually provides scientific evidence for this, which is funny. He provides the data that people are more likely to finish the prescriptions that they get for their pets than the prescriptions that they actually get for themselves, which I thought was fascinating.
That is kind of weird. But again, it's kind of like, they keep saying Peterson believes if you believe something, it's going to become reality, which to me, it's the exact opposite. Because Peterson's not, he's not preaching the secret. Okay. He's saying you got to go out there and work. You got to go do stuff.
Totally.
So I don't know what they're talking about.
He's also saying that you really have to plan your life out. Like you have to put a goal together where you want to be, and you have to focus on that goal, imagine it and will it into existence through hard work and responsibility. So,
and you have to confront, the fears of what happens if you don't.
You have to confront the woman.
The feminine.
You have to confront the feminine and drag it back to your cave.
Oh God. Don't you start.
Man Faces World for $2 says, PSA, do you think Jesus was School of Hillel?
I don't know what that means. I'm a very bad Jew. I don't know what that means.
The PJ1191 for $2 says, hey, Scotty, Jesus, man. I don't know what.
Apparently, the House of Hillel was some Jewish tradition from 110 BCE. But it has to do with the Golden Rule, so maybe that's where it's coming from.
One of the things, as an atheist, one of the things that has always mystified me about atheists is they really take to the Bible as like this document to debunk, and I never got into any of that stuff. One of the reasons why I'm an atheist is just out of pure boredom with what the religious stories had. I always thought science was way more interesting, and like evolutionary psychology is so fascinating. But I can understand why people like Peterson, because the first chapter of the book, when he talks about the Adam and Eve story, he makes it so interesting, so much more interesting than it actually is, because he talks about how, like, he talks about the psychology behind it. So he takes it out of the realm of just, this boring old story. Whenever I think of the Bible, I think, oh, this tired old shit again. Oh my God.
Right. Well, I think that's the real reason. Well, there's two reasons, but I think that's one of the main reasons people like Peterson so much, is that he's able to take something that everyone's bored with, and then he says, no, this is why it's really interesting, and you just didn't realize it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. He's doing a very evolutionary thing. He's using what's there.
Right. But to respond to the super chat, Hillel was the guy who came up with the Golden Rule way back in the day.
Oh, okay. So Jesus did steal it.
Yeah. Well, he was a Jew, so he didn't steal it. He just used it.
Nah, he's appropriating IP.
Okay.
That intellectual property does not belong to him.
That's right.
Pragmatically speaking, if not in objective reality, this dude's weird.
And then, of course, he said willingness to take that responsibility on is identical to leading a meaningful life.
Sure.
Because meaning, in his view, is literally the selfish ideals of an Ayn Randian philosophy. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me. I've read it twice.
Fucking insane, because I forget what it was. There was some interview where they asked Peterson about Ayn Rand, and he gave kind of like a very bullshit, like, I don't want to answer this question because
He's like, I don't want them in my comment section.
Yes, but to think that Jordan Peterson would sympathize with Ayn Rand at all is like they're like on the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Very much so. Yeah.
Just the introduction. I just sat down and read that thing twice, and that's not the only thing I've read. That's so before you start typing Peterson fan, it's the first read through. It's easy to skim because he uses long words and there's lots of dancing around topics.
Yeah.
Man Faces World for $2 says Jordan B. Peterson says we are what we act out, not say. Sort out. Yeah, I'm constantly.
Yeah, so that completely goes against what they're saying about how, your belief or what you believe creates reality or, whatever.
Yeah. What you act out. Most people don't understand their hierarchy of values. They really don't. I started writing mine down. Like seriously, I want to know my hierarchy of values. Humility is one that I strive for, but I fail constantly. Humility is
you're
number 3.
You're a humble guy.
You're good at humility. Yeah, I think you're better than me at humility, to be honest with you. But you're the good cop.
I'm the good cop.
Get me on Twitter. Watch how my humility plummets.
It's true. You'll be all nice and stream, and as soon as you get in Twitter,
I'm like, Arr. I invited Jake and Hugo. Well, I didn't really invite Hugo, and I invited. Well, no, I did. I DM'd Jake. And I invited him on the live stream I had a few days ago. I didn't really invite him on this live stream just because he wouldn't have said yes anyway. Like he kind of told me to, F off. So.
So while it's not hard to read, it's hard to read every word. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Your mind wants to fast forward because you already know where it's headed, you think.
Yeah.
But because it's structured so disparately, and I don't know, because Jordan Peterson talks like this as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a side effect of how he thinks.
That really illuminates where they're coming from, because they're reading Jordan Peterson and they're already guessing where it's going, and they're just guessing wrong.
Yeah.
Or in an intentional way.
You don't think they've read this whole book before they started?
I think they might have. I just think they had such a preconceived notion already that it doesn't matter.
I'm amazed they got as close as they did on that section that we laid out. I mean, they're not making the realization that it's height, that it's moral psychology. They're not even making any kind of recognition that it's valuable and something that we need to achieve. Like right. I would start, like, that's where I start. Like, I think Peterson has perfectly diagnosed the problem. I think political polarization, and people have even asked Peterson if he thinks he's helping political polarization or hurting political polarization. And he thinks he's helping, but it's difficult to say. And I don't,
right.
Like, how do you answer that? Do you think he's helping or hurting?
I don't know. Again, well, I think I remember the interview that they asked that, and didn't he say, like, we'll see? Which I think that's the only answer you can give, really. I mean, the thing that's so weird about Peterson is, like, okay, I could criticize my own channel because I definitely don't think I'm helping political polarization because I'm, like, mean.
Oh, I'm pouring gasoline on it. Are you kidding?
Right. But the thing with Jordan Peterson is, like, and why he's so interesting to me is that you have someone who's saying things that are most of the things he says are so uncontroversial, and yet everyone just perceives him as saying all this crazy shit. Totally. So it's like, if he is contributing to political polarization, like, there's nothing he could do to not at this point.
Yeah, the political polarization exists in the environment, and it's just it's reacting to him.
Right.
Yeah. It's such a strange problem. I mean, the liberal side of the equation will say that it's the institutions will hold together. But I mean, when he's talking in the book, I mean, he's talking about when the great the great state. What does he say? What's the quote? Like the great state shudders. Like,
I haven't read the book, so you're asking the
no,
wrong
they
guy.
had it. They had it up on the screen. I mean,
Oh,
the
I don't
quote
remember.
in the beginning was like the ship of state shakes. Like,
Oh, right.
like things fall apart. I mean, I've
And
read a
it's-
bunch of
yeah.
books where things fall apart. I've read A Long Way Gone, which is a story of I can't remember the country, but it descends into civil war, and it's pretty. It's pretty gut wrenching to see that. Talib talks about that in The Black Swan when Lebanon went from being a stable place. I mean, there's got to be books on Iraq moving from a stable environment to just all out chaos. I mean,
Well, that was our fault.
it
Bush's fault.
was totally our fault. Are you kidding me? Why do you think North Korea wants to get nuclear weapons? It's like,
Right.
who knows what the United States is going to do? Yeah, it's scary.
Right.
It's scary to think about. And I mean, you've had people like, I don't know if you know this, but like Sarah Silverman, when Trump was elected, was advocating for the military to like a military coup on Twitter. I thought, like, you really have some crazy faith in the institutions that surround us if you think like the United States military could pull off a presidential coup and that's not going to throw the country into utter chaos.
Right.
It's
I don't
just
know.
it's crazy.
Maybe.
That he does it. It might be both. I'm sure in the book it's both. I don't know about when he talks. He's repeat. If you listen to a lot of his speeches and his classes and shit, even his Patreon videos, you you hear him repeat shit a lot. So at this point, they're
What does he repeat? In the psychological literature.
kind of just lines he says during his presentation. And so this, I think this is probably one of the first. This is the final draft of the first draft of those lines.
All right, and then
Man Faces World has your number. Friended.
You want me to read it?
Go ahead.
Friended, why are you sharing with PSA? He only reads manga.
Why are you shaming?
Oh, okay. Shaming PSA. But wait,
What's the
when-
Dostoevsky manga look like? I know I'm murdering Dostoevsky.
did you see? I retweeted. Someone did that Jordan Peterson comic.
No, that's awesome.
So, someone drew a comic of what he was saying. It's so silly and over the top.
My Jordan Peterson video, the Kathy Newman one, is picking up steam. I couldn't believe it. It's getting like 1,000 views every couple of days now.
It's I never understand the algorithm's so bizarre. Like, I'll see all of a sudden a bunch of comments start appearing on like an old video for no reason.
It gets in the
then-
algorithm, man.
Right, but how?
Because now we're totally talking shop. We'll talk about this later.
Okay.
one of the most
Hold on, we are I think 5 minutes away from, my math is awful, but we're almost there, guys. Hang in there. I realize, what do their fans think of this stuff? Because it's not like all the fans want is insults, right? I mean, they've dialed the insults back. And the first one that I listened to, they called Jordan Peterson a piece of shit. I haven't heard.
Really?
Yeah, they called him a piece of shit, which I thought,
Based on what?
based on his secret agenda
A secret
trick
Christian
atheists
agenda.
into becoming Christians. I mean, I'm not
Exactly.
I'm not becoming a Christian anytime soon. I think what he's talking about is interesting. I mean, a lot of Kizkazar, the big animation channel, they did a video on the Great Filter. They did a video on
Kyrgyzstan.
Okay. They did a video on automation. I mean, our society is facing a lot of really big challenges. And I think Jordan Peterson talking about those big challenges and trying to make an attempt to unify humanity under a low resolution narrative that's not going to have us like killing each other at the first possible opportunity, I don't think is a bad thing. So do you think these guys are helping political polarization? I don't think they are.
Definitely not.
Hey, these guys are welcome on my channel anytime. Anytime. Seriously.
ominous closing lines, I think, of an introduction.
No.
If we each live properly, we will collectively flourish. Best wishes to all as you proceed through these pages. Dr. Jordan, B-Movie Peterson.
So I guess that's
If
how
we
they get the false objectivism comparison. Is misunderstanding that statement.
Yeah. He said he balls out, man. He said collectively. Jordan Peterson, collectivist.
Live properly.
Which is yet to be defined. But, of course, the rest of the book
Yeah, that's for you to define, buddy. That's the whole point of the book.
is to define properly. We will.
Jordan Peterson is so not defining properly for you. Like,
Right.
is he? Like, he's like, what do you want out of life?
Well, he just defines it as, being productive and having responsibilities and helping people
Yeah.
or helping society.
Yeah, yeah. You're going to encounter difficult times. You're going to want to be prepared.
Collectively be okay. So next time, as we read Chapter 1 of Jordan B. Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life.
Stand up straight with your shoulders back is the name of the first chapter, but
Yeah.
it should be called You're a Fucking Lobster by Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, so you'll see that next time. That one's going to be... I don't know how long these videos are going to be, but we're going to do them until we're satisfied with... how many pages is this first chapter?
28.
28 pages?
Yeah.
That's not terrible. No. We can do that.
A lot of it's just talking about lobster biology, which I can't believe I have to fucking research whether or not his statements on lobster biology are correct, but here we are!
Anyway.
This is actually a great point. Because this is the whole idea behind peer review, where, this guy is really triggered by what he's saying. Now he's going to go research and see if he's full of shit or not. And he may come back with some ideas where he is actually full of shit, which is actually useful.
Right.
That's how peer review works.
The lobster thing's so weird, though, because, I don't know, they fixate on it for some reason. And all it does is help, all it does is make positive memes for Peterson. So I don't know, they're playing a losing game. I don't know what they're thinking.
The bit on the first chapter is amazing. The stuff about lobster is amazing. He tells this story about a wren that took over his backyard. Amazing. Like he's a good writer. He's a very good writer. When I did read fiction, I read Steinbeck. I really like Steinbeck. I don't know how you feel about Steinbeck, but
I don't even know who that is.
It's very poetic the way he writes, and he interweaves different science with different narratives. One of the things that whenever psychologists write, they understand, his whole thing is on narrative, right? He understands that the brain takes story. Like a lot of science writing is just crap because the writers they'll just stack up statistics and they might
like Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Guns, Germs, and Steel, he does drift into some narrative stories every now and again.
Very rarely.
You should swap Guns, Germs, and Steel for Why Nations Fail. Why Nations Fail has a lot of the same stories in it, but he's a much better writer. Darren Ausyarr. Yeah. Very much better writer, much easier read. And that thing it's an Audible book and it comes in 3 files. So the book must be 2,000 pages or something. But I think Guns, Germs, and Steel is kind of the same way.
So if you like this video, give it a like and give it a share to somebody you think is a Jordan Peterson
Oh, we'll share it.
fan that might not be. If you are a Jordan Peterson fan, please stick around because I think you could stand to learn a little bit because you might be an intelligent.
Teach us.
He's going to teach us a lesson.
Please teach us. We want to learn. We're eager. We're just lowly 2-level lobsters. We want to get to the top of that hierarchy.
We're playing one-dimensional chess.
Oh, that's another Jordan Peterson quote. It's like a chess game, you know. There's a lot of things you can do in a chess game, but you can't break the rules of the chess game and still play chess.
Intelligent individual. Jordan Peterson might be an intelligent individual.
Oh, he might be. I don't know.
Oh, here's where it comes up. They're about to say, if you believe in God, you're stupid.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
Priceless. I'm gonna clip out that Jordan Peterson is a piece of shit. I'm gonna do some clips out of this. There's some definitely memeable stuff in these.
But god damn it, he's being a charlatan.
People like Ben Carson and Jordan
Does Jordan Peterson strike you as a charlatan in any way, shape, or form?
I know that's what's so. I mean, that's what's so baffling about the whole thing. 'Cause, like, if he was a charlatan, he could definitely word what he's saying a lot more slickly, you know, and hide. You know, he wouldn't have brought up the femininity chaos thing. Like, why would you bring
totally.
that up? You know.
Yeah, it doesn't make what, and also, I mean, charlatans are. I mean, I guess they would just say that it's a monetary thing. Like that's the whole goal of it, and that he's an egomaniac, that he just wants the limelight. But he's working so hard. Like I don't understand like when he says Maps of Meaning is a difficult book. I mean, I think he spent 15 years writing that book, which is like it's kind of a huge chunk of your life when you're. Like he's really trying to figure something out. The thing that he talks about in the overture, how he says that the problem that he's trying to solve is that we need, you know, something like a religion to unite us, but at the same time, that thing that unites us also has a chance to destroy the world because of between group conflict. That's the problem that he's trying to solve. He articulates it very, very well. And then he goes off into the Jungian or the Jungian or however you want me to call it. So I don't know that he has the solution. And I don't think we got to it in my clip, but I had a clip of him saying, you know, I don't know if this is the right answer, but this is as far as I've thought the problem along. And Sam Harris constantly says, you know, we'll crowdsource this. You know, Sam Harris is great that he's drawn all these super smart people around him that get that, you know, he's identifying the problem is usually the first step. Like somebody else may solve the problem. And I don't think Jordan Peterson is saying this is a solution. He's saying this is a solution that I have come up with. So I think that's totally admirable. I don't know how you get, like he's in it for the money out of that.
Or he's egomaniac.
Yeah, we're not looking at a Trumpian figure here. Although people are starting to say Peterson derangement syndrome.
I think it's definitely 1,000 times worse than Trump, because with Trump I can at least understand why people would feel the way they do about him or misinterpret some of the things he's saying. But for Peterson, it's just like I'm lost. I don't know what the fuck these people are saying.
Yeah. Well, they're seeing what he's been pitched as.
Right.
I think I might have missed a super chat. Maybe I did.
No, I don't think so.
B. Peterson very much fly in the face of
Ben
the idea.
Carson.
The idea of generalized intelligence, the idea that there
him.
is some sort of intelligence quotient that everyone has. You know what? Ben Carson, if I needed neurosurgery, fuck yeah, Ben Carson, you cut my brain open the best you can. Maybe Jordan Peterson's smart at certain things. He's certainly smart at tricking young men into thinking he has important things to say.
Yeah.
Not that great at adopting any sort of philosophy that gels with actual reality as far as we can see it, or even admitting that such a thing exists.
And again, I just want to reiterate one more time. Consider, as an atheist, I assume. If you're not, then this probably doesn't apply to you. As an atheist, though.
Oh no, is this the part where we walk forward? I remember this from my church days. What do I have to say? The world would be a better place without religion.
You have to eat the little atheist wafer from his beard.
Oh my God. Ain't gonna happen.
So, consider why this resonates with you. Especially if you're an apostate. Especially if you're formerly religious.
Yeah, what's that? Apostate is like, I left religion?
Yeah, I guess.
This stuff resonates with me purely on a materialist rationalist level.
Right, and because you're like into evolution stuff, and that's a lot of what Jordan Peterson's coming from.
Totally.
Because the way this reads is very sermon-like to me. I'm not an apostate, so this doesn't get me.
Oh, we learned something.
You, on the other hand, are, and I think you realize very much.
That's why it makes me mad, is because I can see what he's doing.
Because you got worked up. Because I've been talking to you about Jordan Peterson on and off for probably 3 months.
Yeah.
And then we sat down and we watched.
There are a lot of atheists that feel tricked by religion. They feel like religion tricked them, made them an offer. They were good to get that offer and then realized, oh my God, the offer's a lie.
Right.
So they do feel jilted, which I understand.
I know, just it's hard for me to see those religious connotations in Peterson. I mean, I'm not atheist, even though I side with atheists 99% of the time. So maybe I'm just missing something, but
Watch the Dillahunty thing, and it clicked for you, and you went home, you ordered the book, and I got angry voice messages on WhatsApp from this man. This doesn't happen very often. He's a passionate guy, but not an angry guy. He was angry, so I like it.
You should stop taking advantage of people who
agree.
Who are probably in a rough place in their life.
Predisposed to latch on to things that are simple and easy to digest, such as 12 rules, such as, maybe a commandment or two.
This kind of goes back to, a lot of your views on the importance of, or not the importance, but how helpful, religion can be. Because even if you don't like Peterson personally, you could say, well, on a pragmatic level, the things he's telling people would help them be happy and productive. So just ignore, why do you care? Why are you criticizing him? But they just can't get past that.
Yeah, their goal is they think the world would be a better place without religion. They honestly think people would be more rational without religion. They think take religion out of the equation and all the irrationality of the world disappears. And I say this and they accuse me of straw manning them, but like religion is what you act out, bro. Like I hate to use a Peterson quote on you, but you are acting out as if you believe the world would be hearts and unicorns if there was no religion.
Right.
So
it was always going to be ideology, so it's kind of moot.
Yeah. Bring on the Caitlyn Jenners.
Maybe it's because I used to be I still am a huge nerd. And I used to go when I was much younger to those horrible, nerdy comic book message boards where people would argue, who's going to win in a fantasy fight between Superman and Goku, Yes. But it was important. I learned a huge life lesson because I would see people argue to the fucking death about who was going to win some made-up fight between two fictional characters. And I realized if people are willing to fight so much for this, then what does that mean about like something that actually matters, like politics? Totally.
Yeah, no, this is what Peterson's talking about. This is exactly what Peterson is talking about. The way to avoid all of that conflict is it just saying, okay, we just agree it's part of our religion that Batman always beats Superman, Superman always beats, like that's just part of our religion. The religious people figured that out. They're like, okay, we get all these rules down, everyone just agrees to them. Now we can till the fields, we get the fucking work done. We stop sitting around arguing over this stuff. Like, and that's why also, this is where blasphemy laws come from, because, if people descend into arguing over stuff like that, pretty soon the tribe's breaking up and like chaos is on the horizon. So, Darwinian realism, which I love that. For $5 said, they're just regressive SJW atheists. I might be an anti-theist. Oh, he's an anti-theist. But I have what I think is a more rational, realistic, and comprehensive worldview. Yes. Like, thank Buddha.
Well, so I always come from the pragmatic point of view. It's just, if Jordan Peterson's helping people, then why you care so much?
Yeah, Jordan Peterson is a pragmatist. I did a video that took clips from the Truth podcast with Sam Harris. I was actually raking Dillahunty over the coals because Dillahunty totally straw mans Jordan Peterson, and he's been strawmanning Jordan Peterson ever since that debate. And I've been pulling out stuff showing where he's strawmanning, but yeah, it's a pragmatic thing. I think the pragmatic truth is actually an interesting concept, but I swing towards what Brett Weinstein is saying. And I don't know if you've seen have you seen the clip where Jordan Peterson and Brett Weinstein disagree about truth? That Brett Weinstein makes the argument that, okay, Brett Weinstein has metaphorical truth, and Jordan Peterson is saying that wisdom should be the highest truth, and that factual scientific truth should be below wisdom. So he's saying true enough is higher than what we found out and know is factually correct, because what we know and is factually correct can always be overturned. Like he'll say, the ether, he uses the ether theory, right? Like people constantly say the theory of evolution could be turned over tomorrow if we find some new thing, right? If we find out we're living in a simulation, guess what? It's a brand new reality, right? Everything we thought was true is not true anymore. So that's where he's coming from. But Brett Weinstein is saying that you can have lots of different metaphorical truths. Like if a group of people believe this, it could be better for their genes. If a group of people believe this, it could be better for their genes. Like all of those different truth systems are competing a lot in the same way that different organisms are competing, right? Different organisms compete on morphology, on body structure, how well it's adapted to the environment. Well, different superorganisms, different groups of humans that collectivize under a certain ethos, they're competing against other groups. And Brett Weinstein says that scientific truth, which is what Reid would argue for, is above any other truth because it's the only truth that can organize all of the metaphorical truths and discern factual things about each of them, even though those truths may be contradictory with one another.
Right.
But then Jordan Peterson wiggles out of it because he's like, okay, what I think that you're doing is you're putting your ethos, like does this philosophical jujitsu, and I'm like, oh, I gotta figure this out. Like this guy. Go ahead.
That's the only thing that bothers me about Peterson is that I'm totally in the Eric Weinstein camp that high on my list of values is objective truth has to exist. And that we should be trying to figure out what it is.
Me too.
So,
this is why is why I like height, because height is basically saying, okay, height has figured out how we create these moral communities. Like what intuitions drive people to become parts of certain moral communities. Like these guys obviously have an axe to grind with authority. Like I'm willing to predict that their next video about the hierarchical chapter is going to be about like equality and how hierarchy sucks. And that, like all Jordan Peterson is saying is he's making an argument that hierarchy must exist. Like if you get rid of hierarchy, you lose competence. And if you lose competence, you cannot no longer structure a society. And he's saying hierarchies can be corrupt, and they get corrupt. Like he even says they tend towards corruption. But that's a problem that modern Western society has come closest to solving, closer than anyone else, because corruption, like in third world nations and dictator's handbook type stuff, corruption is actually the norm. That's the feature. It's not
right.
Yeah. So, but he's saying you got to worry about the hierarchy of competence. Like you have to realize that that's something there, so you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But these guys aren't going to. That's that nuance. I know the left loves nuance, but that nuance.
And just on a pragmatic level, maybe there's a future somewhere where we can get rid of hierarchies, when everyone becomes a hyper evolved, fourth dimensional being. But there's no way in hell that, we could just dispense with hierarchies. It's built into us. We're not going to be able to just throw them off.
The big problem, I think, is AI. I honestly think AI, because they're like Ray Kurzweil's talking about Like when AI is like thousands of levels more intelligent than us, like the hierarchy doesn't cease to exist.
Well, but there's a lot. Well, I don't know. That's a whole. I don't know really, and a whole other thing about AI, but
Yeah.
because there's this assumption about AI that it's going to have motivation, which it could not have any motivation at all. Because why would it?
But wouldn't it have our motivation? Because we would say like that's
Only if we gave it a motivation.
yeah, make paper clips is like a motivation, right?
Right. But I mean, it seems like when I hear people worried about AI, like I understand Sam Harris when he says he's worried about AI in terms of, you program it to protect people, and then it says, well, the best way to protect people is like to imprison them or something. I understand that, but I don't really foresee the danger of AI where people think it's going to become like self-aware. Like it's going to have some sort of consciousness or exterior drive beyond what's programmed into it.
As someone who leans heavy towards biological determinism, I don't know if self-aware is actually a necessity.
Well, I guess that's. Well, I mean, when I say self-aware, I mean like have an independent drive.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I see that the problem, it's a pretty obvious problem, right? Like if you could even dumb it down, like say it's not AI, say like some dude is born that's like 1,000 times smarter than everyone else. That guy's going to take over the world. Like depending upon what his ethos is. Like let's hope he's a good guy, right? Let's hope he's American, right?
Right. First you hope he's American. First you hope that Dr. Manhattan is American.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So let's close this out. People, someone in the chat just mentioned that we've been going 4 hours. Have we been going 4 hours? Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
You're a maniac. I can't believe we got 10,000 views on that 5-hour stream. It's incredible.
Right.
Also, scapegoating. It's definitely scapegoating. And I know, as a Jordan Peterson fan, you don't want me to say that. I know that you're kind of upset at me for, you're really upset at me.
We're not
and
upset.
Hugo for
We're
even
not upset.
approaching this
We're not
subject in a
remotely
negative
upset.
way. And if it helped you, it helped you. That's great. But I don't really think it has. What I think it's done is made you kind of an asshole to the people around you. You might feel better about yourself, but you may notice, and this is probably not true of everybody, but there's been this thing going around where, because this is a very conservative book in general. It's also a religious book in general. You may notice that your otherwise non-conservative, non-religious friends not very happy with you right now. I've seen a lot of people, especially Jordan Peterson fans, going, even if they didn't vote for Trump, but I support Dave Rubin, or I like this, or I'm an anti-feminist. They don't like that I say these things. They're assholes. They just don't get it. It's a you thing. Papa Jake and Uncle...
What are you laughing about?
The irony is just the meter's destroyed. The irony meter is destroyed. We have, internet atheists saying people around you are annoyed with you, because you're spouting your views or whatever. It's just.
I know, it's off the charts. I can't even believe it. It's like, oh my God.
There's no self-awareness.
And why do we care what you guys think? Like, one of the reasons why I am an atheist is because I don't care what you think. I honestly don't.
Uncle Hugo are here to try to help you out. This is our self-help book called Don't Take Advice from Idiots. Idiots. Anyway.
Idiots.
Yes.
But we admit it. So anyway,
That's what I'm saying.
you can always follow us on Twitter at PapaBirdJake.
You can follow...
Okay, we'll leave it there. Closing thoughts, any?
I don't know. Nothing that hasn't been said. They're dumb. Whatever. Let's move on with our lives. Until we do the next stream, the next 5-hour stream on them.
If they want to, well, I doubt. First of all, I doubt. Somebody asked me to do this, and I was like, okay. I doubt. You came in at the last minute. I was thinking I was going to do it by myself, but if they want to come on and talk to either of us, I mean, I'm down to talk to them. You're down to talk to them. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, totally.
I know what the conversation will be. It'll be us saying, Jordan Peterson doesn't believe what you say he believes. And then they'll say, yes, he does. And then it'll be that for 2 hours.
Isn't it weird? I mean, Haidt talks about this. He's like, you can't really. There's nothing that you can do. Like people aren't going to listen to facts and evidence, even though they're sworn to because they're atheist empiricists. But that's not how human beings work. Like they've made up their mind. Not only that, not only have they made up their mind, are making these public declarations, which are like becoming part of their identity. Their audience is growing, or like they've gotten hundreds of comments that they've read about what a great job they're doing. Like they're not gonna.
Of course, they can't walk it back.
It's called the consistency principle is kicking in right now. Like in order to maintain consistency, they're going to have to maintain their stance. No amount of evidence that we can throw at them will change their mind. So.
Well, and also, I think, they always have this list of what people are most afraid of, and they always say, oh, people are more afraid of, public speaking than dying. The real thing is people are more afraid of being wrong than dying.
Totally.
So, they're not going to change their minds, at least not from us.
And also all the stuff that Peterson talks about in that we need a shared ethic and ethos. This is part of their shared ethic and ethos. This is what unites their moral community. This is what binds them together. So, all right. Thanks, you guys, for the super chats. Thanks, PSA Sitch, for sticking around. Obviously, subscribe to PSA Sitch. He does great videos. And obviously, and you should check out Cordial Curiosity too. I didn't put links in the description, but I will put links. And leave comments. Rip us up. We can take it. We're all adults here. Daniel Irish says, good stream, lots of laughs. I'm glad you had fun. Take care, you guys. See you next time.